Hey, it's Adeline Van Dyke from Coldwell Banker Faith Properties in Utica. I always get asked, why do I love real estate? It's very simple. I love my clients. I love every single thing about helping them find or sell their home. Making sure the home is solid and ready for sale or solid and ready for the buyer's inspection, to making sure that they're getting the best rate on their mortgage, making sure they're getting the best price on their house. Just everything involved in the sale is vital. My absolute favorite part of real estate is when a buyer walks into the house they're going to buy. I can feel it before they even know they're loving the house. It's just that obvious. So I'd love to experience that feeling with you. So give me a call. Adeline Van Dyke, Coldwell Banker Faith Properties, 315-404-6431. Or you can find me on Facebook or visit my website at centralnewyork.com/Adeline. Thank you, and I look forward to welcoming you home.
When it's your hard-earned money on the line that you are investing into a home, it makes sense to choose a proven professional to assist you in making one of the biggest investments you may ever make. Josh's dedication of over 20 years to the home construction industry allows him to bring knowledge and experience to your doorstep. That means you can feel confident and comfortable with his service to you. Past clients love his attention to detail and thorough written reports. By allowing Priceless Inspections to help you make a well-informed decision concerning your property, you will find that a quality inspection is priceless. Follow Priceless Inspections on Facebook or call 315-525-8725.
Hi, this is attorney Nick Pasalacqua. The team of attorneys I have assembled at Pasalacqua & Associates has been carefully hand-picked to include the best trial attorneys in the particular areas of the law that we practice. Have you been charged with DWI or any other crime? Members of our team include former assistant district attorneys, now fighting to protect your rights 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Have you or someone you love been seriously injured in a motor vehicle accident? Members of the team at Pasalacqua & Associates include former insurance defense attorneys, now fighting to ensure that you get every penny you're entitled to. If you need legal help quick, don't waste your time or money calling anyone else. Remember, for legal help quick, you better call Nick and the team at Pasalacqua & Associates. 315-500-NICK or 315-500-6425 or visit cnytriallaw.com today.
In the Mohawk Valley, for the best real estate service, you gotta have faith. Coldwell Banker Faith Properties, 315-735-2222 or www.centralnyhomes.com.
Good evening. It is Sunday, March 25th. We are live from the Disruption Network studio right here in Utica, New York, the heart of New York, and right now the heart of the baseball world. I'm JP. I'm sitting here with my boy SPG, Sean Patrick Gaffney, and we are really excited to get to a really interesting show leading up 4 more days to opening day. It feels so good.
It does. And you know what? It is a gorgeous spring day here in central New York, and it's got me thinking baseball. And I think we're finally over that hump, and we're getting really into spring here, and I'm pumped. It's opening day here this week. What do we have? 4 days. 4 days till opening day, and every single team will be in action on Thursday.
So
I'm excited, man. I can't wait.
It certainly takes the edge off the winter chill that we're still kind of experiencing here. It was cold this morning, and there's still a lot of white stuff out there on the ground. So we're really hoping to avoid that in Yankees and in Boston and the Mets. Anybody playing in the Northeast to start, we're hoping to avoid the snow rather than the rain delays in April, right?
Yeah, let's get rid of that snow and let's jump into real spring weather here. I think we're close, and it's time for baseball, man. We're ready. We are ready here on the D.
So we got a big show coming up today. A lot of stuff going on. We still got a lot of action in spring training. Spring training, nobody's safe. We got injuries to guys like Justin Turner and Madison Bumgarner that we're going to get to. Big signing today of one of the top prospects in baseball, Scott Kingery by the Phillies. Headlining today's news. A slew of guys that we got to get to that are having some good springs in our 3 up and 3 down. And we're going to get to our 7th inning stretch eventually, where we talk about the 7 best stadiums.
Yeah, we're going to be ranking
in Major League Baseball.
Our 7 best stadiums, ballparks in Major League Baseball, and we've compiled our own list, and we'll go through that here in a little bit.
We're going to get to some predictions. We're going to go down our awards, our postseason award predictions, who we think are going to be, Rookie of the Year, MVP, Manager of the Year, Cy Young. Also going to get to our, the way we think the playoffs and World Series is going to shape out and give you our predictions there. And tied in with that, we're going to go over the Vegas win totals. We're going to see what Vegas thinks every team is going to do and play a little over-under with that. So without further ado, let's get started on this week's episode of The Baseline. Sean's going to give a shout-out to some of our sponsors, then we're going to hit you with some news and notes.
Yeah, before we get into the news and notes, I want to give a shout-out to Steet Ponte Volkswagen. Stop down to their showroom at 5046 Commercial Drive in Yorkville, New York. See why it's easy to do business with Steet Ponte Volkswagen. Visit their website at steetpontevolkswagen.net. Also, shout out here to attorney Nick Pasalacqua and Associates. For legal help quick, you better call Nick. Call attorney Nick Pasalacqua and the team at Pasalacqua and Associates, 315-500-NICK. And visit their website at cnytriallaw.com. All right, we're going to jump into news and notes now, JP. As you mentioned, there was a lot going on this week. Some major notable injuries to some key players in the NL West. Justin Turner, broken wrist. He's out, I believe, for about 2 months is what they're saying. So that's a major hit to that lineup.
It's a big blow.
Huge blow to that lineup. That's
a cog.
He's a middle of the order bat there. One of the team leaders. That's a tough loss for a team that looks like a World Series contender, missing one of their best players right off the bat.
Justin Turner got off to a really hot start last year. He was hitting up around 400 for a better portion of the first half of the season. Really, when the Dodgers made the push and had that really successful start and really started to open up a gap between them and the rest of the NL West, Justin Turner was a big part of that. Big part of everything that they do over the last couple of years. He played to a 5.8 WAR last year. 322, 21, and 71, and that's only in 450 at bats. Justin Turner, big loss for the Dodgers. Speaking of the NL West and the Dodgers' arch rivals, San Francisco also will be out without the services of Madison Bumgarner, who took a line drive off of his pitching hand.
Yeah, he broke his left pinky, had surgery yesterday, I believe, had some pins inserted in the pinky. Looks like it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. They're going to be without Madison Bumgarner, who, obviously that's probably an even bigger loss than Justin Turner. Not to make light of Justin Turner going down, but for how much the San Francisco Giants need to rely on an elite arm like him, one of the best in the game, and being without him again after going through last year with, I don't know how many starts he made. I want to say maybe 10 because of that dirt biking accident, freak injury last year.
Stay off of the dirt bike.
Stay off the dirt bike.
And that's all we screamed in our draft, too.
Yeah.
Stay off the dirt bike.
Yeah, I should have said stay away from line drives,
away from
too.
Line
I forgot
drives.
to tell him that
a hazard of the job. But you're right. That's a big cog for San Francisco to lose at the top of their rotation, especially considering that near the middle of the rotation they're having issues or some question marks with Jeff Samardzija, too.
Yeah,
so
Samardzija looks like he's going to miss 2 to 3 weeks as well with some shoulder issues. So right out of the gate already, before the season even starts,
they're depleted.
Probably missing their 2 best pitchers.
Coming into with the experiment that they're doing with the veteran players, surrounding with the core that they have there, bringing in McCutchen and Longoria, they're really counting on the durability and strength of the top of that rotation with, Cueto, Samardzija, and Mad Bum, especially with having Madison Bumgarner back this year. And, seemingly going to be healthy going into the start of the season, that could be really detrimental. The lack of depth in their rotation now. Not so much, as you alluded to, maybe for the Dodgers, where it seems offensive depth is one of their strengths. So it'll be interesting to see how both teams fare without their stars. Who else we got that got injured this week? So many.
It was a really weird week as far as, getting back to the Madison Bumgarner injury. How he got hurt was a line drive off his left hand. And that happened several times this week. Chris Sale yesterday, I was watching a little bit of that spring training game. Boston, he was going out there for his final tune-up, getting ready for the regular season here. Figured routine, a few innings, everything's looking good. And he gets hit with a line drive right in the left hip. And he went down hard. He was grabbing at his knee and his hip, and it looked pretty bad right when it happened. Reports came out after the game that it was just a contusion, so it's a bruised hip. It looks like it's not going to be anything major. He's likely going to still start on opening day. Even if he doesn't, if they push him back a few days, it looks like it's not a long-term thing. So Chris Sale, by all reports, as of right now, is going to be all right, and he's going to be ready to go here for the first week of the season. Chris Archer also had a similar thing happen to him. Again, nothing major, but that's 3 big arms right there that just got hit with a line drive and had some issues. Something you do see in baseball, but I don't remember seeing 3 big names like that getting hit with a line drive to the point where it was a major injury scare and ended up being for Bumgarner. So
collectively,
happening out there.
Boston Red Sox Nation, that's a detrimental type injury to the fans. And anybody that cheers for the Red Sox, should Sale go down, and it leaves them questions with depth in that rotation too. Should he have gone down? But the people that are holding their breath for Archer getting hurt is the Tampa Bay front office.
Oh, of course,
because that's him getting hurt and getting the damaged goods stamps on him at all could really limit the haul or the return that they're going to get when they go try to trade him. Going towards the middle of this year, because you certainly don't see the Devil Rays. I wanted to call them the Devil Rays. You certainly don't see the Rays in any position anytime soon to make a run with surrounding Chris Archer with pieces, because if they were going to, they had enough pieces already sitting there prior to letting some of these guys go and cutting them and crazy. Like we always say, Kevin Kiermaier's waving the white flag. Had Chris Archer gone down, we might have seen Kiermaier in the loony bin. So
I don't think the poor guy can take much more.
Absolutely. But it's good to know that he's probably not going to be out for an extended period of time either.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to be all right. And yeah, like you said, the front office there probably their jaws
Gasping.
probably hit the floor, thinking, okay, it's no secret that he could be one of the top trade targets of this season.
They should start him 10 times and wrap him in bubble wrap in between.
Absolutely.
He should go on
especially after that
7 or 8 day rotation with him.
That little incident there they might get some extra bubble wrap and
just because
peanuts.
he's extremely valuable in the prospect world right now. He's probably you're looking at getting a guy, maybe an organization's top 3 guy somewhere, a 3, 2, or a 1, plus a significant haul of maybe 2 or 3 or 4 more guys in their top 30 for a guy like Chris Archer at the deadline. You don't want to risk that.
And he's still a young pitcher too.
He is.
He's mid-20s, possibly not even hit his prime yet. And you put him on a contender, he's a Cy Young type arm.
He's, the strikeouts per 9 is obviously what jumps off the page. His ERA is a little high last year. I think he was around 4.5. He's 4.07, but he's playing on a not so good team. 249 strikeouts in 201 innings. That's pretty good, and that's not the type of stuff that you're able to acquire on the open market all the time. So and also it's not the type of guy that most organizations have sitting around that they're willing to shop, and so he can really turn around or jumpstart what the Tampa Bay Rays are trying to do there. and maybe perhaps make it quicker or cut it in half, as we've seen, not to harp on the Yankees type stuff, but, we've seen the Yankees do it with a couple shrewd moves. They end up turning around that whole farm system and really jump-starting that rebuild or youth movement, and pushing it probably 2 years in advance of where it should have been. Because we've seen a team like Houston struggle where they had to lose 50 or lose 110 games and win, 52, 58 win seasons for a couple years there before they could really start to turn it around and really just reach the peak of that whole movement that they tried to start, 7 or 8 years ago. So you could see a move like this really benefiting Tampa Bay. So keep Chris Archer safe,
yeah,
Tampa Bay.
You look at what the Chicago White Sox did with Chris Sale a couple of years ago. And this scenario is very similar for Tampa Bay with Chris Archer. The White Sox ended up getting Yoan Moncada back from Boston in that deal, which is, he's one of the top regarded prospects in all of baseball. He's going to be a full-time major leaguer this year, it looks like.
At one point, he was the top prospect in all of baseball, maybe at the point of that trade.
So you're looking at Tampa Bay this season likely trying to make a similar move as to what the Chicago White Sox did a couple of years ago there, and his health is at utmost importance for that organization's future right now, even if he's not going to be there.
Without question.
But Chris Archer is okay. We'll see how things go forward, but it looks promising there, and he is still expecting to start his first start coming into the regular season. A Yankees injury that made headlines. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I get a news update that says Greg Bird has been scratched from the Yankees spring training game due to soreness in his foot. And at first I didn't really think much about it, thinking, okay, well, it makes sense, if he's got some soreness there, give him a day or two off and have him ready to go opening day. And then all of a sudden I hear he's going for a CAT scan and an MRI. Yeah.
That's Yankee Nation right there.
Some gasping for sure.
Nick Johnson 2.0.
I've seen many people making that comparison.
And I don't agree with it.
I don't either.
Really?
But it is very concerning. And at first I didn't think anything of it. But the more and more I read into it, and I saw Brian Cashman's comments on it. And Brian Cashman, he's usually a fairly straight shooter about things. And he sounded concerned about it when they interviewed him about it. I guess the CAT scan and MRI came back somewhat promising, but still enough concern where Greg Bird is back in New York and he's going to be evaluated by a foot specialist. And anytime you hear that, it's not good news by any means. So we'll see what happens going forward there. That'd be a big loss of a major left-handed power bat in that lineup.
He could potentially go 40 homers in that lineup.
Could potentially go 40 homers. And he's been on that pace before when he has been healthy.
Last spring.
Of course, that's the problem is he hasn't been healthy for a few years, and it's really disappointing to see he's still got some issues there, and that his availability for the regular season is in some serious jeopardy right now, at least for the beginning of it. Getting back to Neil Walker, which we've talked about.
Absolutely. How good's that $4 million 1-year contract?
That signing is huge right now because Neil Walker can play first base. It's not his natural position, but a guy like Greg Bird going down, if you have to be without him, at least you have a guy like Walker where you can put him in there. And then you got Ronald Torres and Tyler Wade there for second base. Brandon Drury is going to be probably the starting third baseman.
Yeah.
He's also a little bit banged up right now. He got hit on the elbow last week. Doesn't sound major. I think he is expecting to be ready for opening day this week. So there's going to be a little bit of a shuffle there, with their plans for second base and first base if Greg Bird misses some extended time.
Yeah.
They could also look at bringing back Adam Lind, who they signed to a minor league deal in spring training and then ended up cutting ties with him once everything was looking good at the time. So he's still out there. He hasn't signed with the team.
You also got Tyler Austin.
Tyler Austin's another guy. Yep, a good, solid young player that could benefit from some extra playing time. So who knows? I mean, Greg Bird, it's a key left-handed bat in a lineup full of elite right-handed bats.
I think you're absolutely right. He's key. They can't replace a left-handed pop bat like that late in the season that Greg Bird brings to the table, but I think it merits, saying this, he wasn't having a great spring.
No, he was
and
not.
it's not that you want to see the guy get injured, but perhaps it's another situation as when he started off really rough last year, and then all of a sudden you find out that he was hurt, and it kind of starts to make sense. You know, he's hitting 154 for the spring with 16 strikeouts and 60 plate appearances. You know, not quality stuff, not quality top level Greg Bird like we've seen him swing the stick. So it merits saying that he hasn't had a great spring. And maybe, you know, it does allude to something bigger going on with his foot. You know, maybe he's been playing hurt. Who knows? You don't want to knock the guy. You don't want to call him a Nick Johnson 2.0. I certainly don't. I'm a Greg Bird fan. I just like the way that he sets up to the plate. I love his swing. I do. Everything's fluid about it. We just got to keep him on the field. And it seems for the last 5 or 6 years that that's been a concern for the Yankees. You know, anybody that they've had there has gotten hurt. It's
and you
almost
can't
been
make
like a
that
curse.
Nick Johnson comparison. I mean, yeah, sure, the injury history is there that, you know, you could kind of be scared about Greg Bird's availability and injury-prone type player, but Greg Bird, when he has played, has been, like you said, you know, a very good player. And Nick Johnson, he never really quite got there. He ended up being a solid major leaguer, but, you know, for all the hype that there was for him, he ended up not really having that many good at-bats in the major leagues, whereas Greg Bird has proven he can be an elite power bat if he is healthy.
I mean, the guy fouled a pitch off of his leg last year and had a fracture. All right, and then that fracture got out of control probably because he's trying to do too much on it and trying to rush back, and then he had to stay out an extended period of time. But it's not like he was playing basketball, Aaron Boone style, and or doing something stupid or doing
riding a dirt bike,
some kind of freak accident like a Teddy Bridgewater for the Minnesota Vikings a few years ago, where he just went back to throw a pass and the knee blew out. It's not like we're talking about a guy who's made of glass. I don't think he doesn't seem like a Derrick Rose type where it's really you got a hamstring injury or you see those guys that are perpetually hurt. But then there's a Greg Bird. I won't equate it totally to Ken Griffey Jr. But Ken Griffey Jr. spent how much time on the DL later in his career? But it was because he was crashing into walls and diving for balls. It wasn't because later in life he had some problems with the hammies and stuff.
Yeah, and
but,
some of those guys, especially in the outfield, you'll see, like you mentioned, Ken Griffey Jr. And to make a present-day comparison, Bryce Harper, some guys just play the game so hard in the outfield that there's going to be injuries.
I mean, Bryce Harper gets hurt last year and misses some games with that hyperextension, stepping on the bag wrong, but that's because he's busting his ass down the line trying to get to the base and be safe. So how do you fault a guy for fouling a pitch off of his leg, in Greg Bird's regard? It's interesting to see what's going on with his foot this year. Maybe it's just something simple. Maybe it's like a bursitis or bone spurs or something they can medicate or therapy him out of and he can play through.
Or at least a short-term thing.
Short-term,
maybe
exactly.
You put him on the 10-day DL to start the season, and he's back in the middle of April.
Which that $4 million, $4 million, and the amount of blowback that I read, and I'm sure that you read, from Yankee fans all over about the Neil Walker deal, it was just absurd to begin with, and now in hindsight, they all got to be eating crow on that one because now you have a veteran presence who's going to step in for Greg Bird at a very cheap, $4 million. Like you said, I think he made $16 million last year.
I think he was over 17 last year, and the year before he was at about 11 million.
It's just crazy. So the Yankees are getting extreme value, and now they're, you look at their starting infield, and they're on the cheap for the starting infield. They're paying Giancarlo Stanton. That's who they're paying. Other than that, the Yankees are relatively cheap.
Yeah,
organizational control is a wonderful
Stanton and
thing.
Ellsbury.
Organizational control.
D. Ellsbury.
D. Ellsbury. Yes. So that's a bigger blow to be on the DL than a guy like Greg Bird. I guess you're only paying Greg Bird $550,000 in the neighborhood of. You're paying Jacoby Ellsbury a whole lot more to take up space on the DL, but it's almost best case scenario that Jacoby Ellsbury is hurt for the Yankees.
It really is,
just because of the wealth of talent that the Yankees can parade out there in the outfield. And how he would be jamming up a spot. Why keep him on the bench? Obviously, he's going to probably play at his contract. He's going to play when healthy, maybe.
And he's actually a good guy to have on your bench.
He wasn't bad
pinch
last
running
year
purposes.
In September. He really wasn't. He started to swing the stick. He started to get on base. He's a good base runner, like you just said. But he's not a $20 million guy.
He can be an asset. It's just a matter of him
not a $20
having
million
an
guy.
albatross of a contract right now.
And everything that we've seen of, like a guy like Aaron Hicks, there's another guy that projects, big time numbers for the position especially, but can't seem to stay on the field. Last year with the oblique, those are lingering injuries, especially if you consider where your oblique is and swinging a bat. You can understand how that could nag on somebody, but those are things to watch out too. Aaron Hicks, the sample size is really small, and at certain points last year, the sample size was enough to know that it was horrible. So there was really bright moments last year that really give you promise on a guy like Aaron Hicks. The intangibles are there. The tangibles are there because he's got a missile launcher for an arm in the outfield. He covers a lot of ground. He's going to open the season as the starting center fielder.
I
in
believe
Yankee
he's
Stadium.
having a nice spring training too.
Switch hitter with a lot of pop, tremendous upside on the bases. But it's, across the sample size, it's been hit or miss. But I'm really looking forward to see, maybe a healthy Aaron Hicks. He looked like he bulked up a lot. I don't know if you noticed that. He looks in fit, tip-top shape. So I'm excited to see what Aaron Hicks can do. But, again, some skepticism on my part, just a little bit, because I'd like to see him be a little more healthy. But, no room for Jacoby Ellsbury because I still evaluate Clint Frazier above a Jacoby Ellsbury too at this point in time.
Yeah,
Clint
absolutely.
Frazier's going to start the season, still lingering effects of the concussion, but he's going to either way he was going to start the season. He was going to start the season down, especially given the spring that Billy McKinney's had. I think Billy McKinney has earned his spot, rightfully so, on this roster.
And McKinney has kind of tailed off the last week or so. Which isn't really a huge surprise. He's done some good things, and he's obviously opened some eyes with the Yankees. And yeah, if he's with the major league team right from the bat, right from day one, opening day, I have no complaints with that. And it's great. Again, we talk about the wealth of Yankees farm system, the war chest of young talent they have down there to be able to have a guy like Clint Frazier
start the
cutting
season.
his teeth in the minor leagues and get it bats down there and be the man in Scranton Wilkes-Barre. And if there is an injury, God forbid, with an outfielder, he's a guy that you'll see come up and fit right in. He did a pretty good job last year, and the Yankees, they had some opportunity to make some trades in the offseason involving Clint Frazier. Garrett Cole comes to mind with the Pittsburgh Pirates. That trade didn't go anywhere because they wanted Clint Frazier is one of the reasons that they weren't able to come to an agreement with Pittsburgh, and that shows the faith that the Yankees organization has in a guy like Clint Frazier. And him being in the minors, sure, the concussion kind of forced their hand on that, but it's a good thing to have a guy like Clint Frazier, who is a major league ready baseball player that you can put in the minors, get him a little bit more seasoning, and make him hungrier to come up. He has that experience from playing last year. He got a taste of it. And we'll see what he can do down there. He's going to be one of the elite bats in the minors, and it's going to be exciting to kind of see how he does and when he ends up joining the big club this year.
So the Yankees have, like we said, the laundry list of players that are down in the minors cutting their teeth, but potentially have 3 impact rookies set to arrive this year with Clint Frazier, Gleyber Torres, and Miguel Andujar, and potentially some pitchers that may make the roster or may make a spot start like a Chance Adams. I don't see Chance Adams coming up. I see Chance Adams at his peak value right now, to tell you the honest truth. And I think that the Yankees are going to shop him around in some deals because he really only projects to maybe an Adam Warren or a 3 or 4 or 5 guy, unless he's unless he really just does possess Greg Maddux type ability, because those are the numbers that he's putting up in the minor leagues. He's putting up Greg Maddux dominant type numbers, no strikeouts, but the velo isn't there. He doesn't hit those wow factors that you would look at like a Steven Strasburg when he was coming up, the 103 and four pitches. Luis Severino, another good example. Noah Syndergaard. That's not Chance Adams. And the Yankees have a few guys like that are really coveted more than a Chance Adams. So I see the Chance Adams situation going to play out going towards when the Yankees are looking to fill some spaces or some needs around the trade deadline. Listen for Chance Adams' name to be mentioned in a lot of those as a potential target. But the Yankees got 3 impact players potentially in the minor leagues that could make a huge impact on the big league club. And speaking of impact rookies and impact players potentially making an impact on the MLB club this year, Scott Kingery, the number 1 prospect for the Phillies, signed a 6-year deal today, pre-arbitration eligible, under organizational control. But the Phillies went ahead and signed him for 6 years. The deal, reported by John Paul Morosi of MLB.com, rumored to be in the neighborhood of $24 million across that 6 years. And if you're scratching your head, saying that sounds kind of low, well, that's because on average they would have been paying him around $550,000 for the next 4 years, or probably so, that they have him left under organizational control. You're looking at him paying about $500,000, maybe a little more, for a guy like that. So, by comparison, the Yankees right now are paying their top prospect, Gleyber Torres, $585 million this year, or $585,000 this year. So by signing Scott Kingery to this deal, they keep it down based on what he's going to get when he is arbitration eligible, and based on what he's going to get when he is his first free agency comes up. They're saving a lot of money by doing it this way. And also, they don't need to worry about service time. So after signing,
that's the big thing right there, is the service time thing, where you see in not to break away from the Scott Kingery talk, but when you saw Ronald Acuna get sent down to the minors, there's no way that guy isn't ready for Major League Baseball. He is a Major League Baseball athlete, potentially a top-level one right off the bat. But they sent him down to retain him for extra years, more team control. Whereas Scott Kingery, the Phillies decided to bring him onto the Major League roster to kind of buck that whole trend of, where you saw with like Chris Bryant, where you have to wait a month or 2 into the season to bring him up, or else you lose a year of team control. So that's what this deal is about. And yeah, it is a 6-year deal, and I have a breakdown here of how that works. So it's 6 years, and then there's 3 team options as well that could make this a 9-year contract. So this year he's making $750K. So he doesn't get a huge raise on what he would have been making anyways this season. A little bit, but not a huge one. Next year it goes up to $1.25 million. 2020, $1.5 million, and then $4 million, $6 million, and $8 million. And then starting in 2024, he's got 3 team options, $13 million, $14 million, and $15 million, with a $1 million buyout clause in there where they could decline the options and buy him out for another $1 million.
So you're potentially talking, Scott Kingery being one of the top, in the way that he's playing in spring training this year, off the charts.
Absolutely.
So you're talking about somebody that could be one of the top players at his position within the next 3 years, and the Phillies only having to pay him $1.5 million and escalating from there. But the max, I think you just said, is $6 million for one of those years.
The last one, the year 6 is $8 million.
It's absolutely shrewd by the Phillies to have made this move. Probably a good idea for him to have signed this contract as well. You're going to be well received in one of the toughest sports towns in America, and really maybe be a cornerstone. And if you look at the wealth of talent that the Phillies have, they also have a really good position to be in right now, in that they don't have much committed money on their roster. So they went out and they signed Arrieta to 3 years, and
Carlos
they went out
Santana.
and signed Carlos Santana, because they didn't have a whole lot of money committed. So it's another team that has quietly done this rebuild thing, but they still have a young core of talented players that they can build around and add to. So you got them, winning a wild card or contending for a little while in the NL East, and in the Arrieta signing really got you excited about the Phillies. So this has got to get you excited too.
It really
That
does,
not
yeah.
only are they going all in on trying to put veteran pieces around their young guys right now, maybe a year or two earlier than most thought they would, but by signing him to this deal and putting him on the major league roster today, they're saying, you know what, maybe we're going to go for it this year.
It certainly looks that way, and you know what? Props to them for kind of bucking the trend and doing this, because you know, if you're Scott Kingery and you're going out there and you're basically dominating spring training right now. He's got 4 home runs, 4 stolen bases. He's batting in the neighborhood of 350,
His
360.
OPS is 1154, something like that.
1154 OPS, and doing everything in his power to make the team. And there are some spots where he can slot into the lineup and move around a little bit. You have some openings there. And then if you go and you send him down after this spring, I mean, you saw it with Chris Bryant a few years ago. He was understandably frustrated with having to go play in the minor leagues when he was already almost an MVP level
caliber player
and having to go play in the minor leagues and ride a bus and all that stuff that comes along with being a minor leaguer. And you know, ready to go, and you're not rewarded with that spot on the major league team. It's got to be discouraging.
So first off, there's no way that this contract ends up going 9 years. It's theoretically impossible if this kid projects to what he's supposed to project to. But if it goes 9 years, Kingery is 24 years old right now. You'd have him through age 33 season for $24 million total. It's insane.
And to put it in perspective, too, what Kingery did last year in the minor leagues, he was the only player, I believe, in Major League and minor league baseball to go 25 home runs plus and 25 stolen bases plus. So that tells you what kind of talent this kid is. He's a 300 hitter, pretty good plate discipline.
313, 18 homers, 44 RBIs at Double-A Reading. And 8 homers, 21 RBIs, and hit 294 at AAA Lehigh Valley. This year, spring training stats are kind of gaudy. In 53 plate appearances, 51 at-bats, 1 triple, 4 home runs, 3 doubles, 7 ribbies, 4 stolen bases, 12 strikeouts, not really too alarming when your batting average is .392 and you're getting on base at a .415 clip. And when you're hitting .392 and you're only at .415, that's because you're not walking at all. And you expect that to probably change given the plate discipline that you say he has. These numbers are gaudy, and even for spring training.
If I'm a Philadelphia Phillies fan, and we've talked about them quite a bit in our time here on the baseline, just because it is an interesting team to talk about their outlook with the moves they've made and then bringing Arrieta on, like you said. If I'm a Phillies fan, after the last couple of years, I am pumped for this season.
How could you not be?
After this Kingery
How could you not be? This Kingery deal is one that, it takes that Arrieta deal and it makes that Arrieta deal make sense.
And he could be
now
a key
it makes
cog
sense.
in that lineup, too. It's just another great addition that people didn't expect would be there on day one. And, we're talking potential here. We have to see this kid do it at the major league level in the regular season. But his track record is good, and I expect him to be a good quality player even as soon as this year and a contributor for the Phillies.
And huge value there. Huge value.
So moving along a little bit for news and notes. So we mentioned Ronald Acuna. He was sent to the minor leagues after having an outstanding spring. Expect to see him back up here probably before the end of April. Bartolo Colon was released from his contract by the Texas Rangers. There is talk that they may re-sign him. They released him in order to get around paying a roster bonus. So he might get re-signed, but it potentially would be a short-term thing. They might just need him to make 1 or 2 starts here at the regular season from what I've read. So you might see him with the Texas Rangers after all, at least at the beginning of the season here. Within the next few days, you might see them re-sign Colon to another deal. Michael Conforto, the New York Mets young stud outfielder, is playing in spring, and he's looking pretty good. He was expected to be out until possibly May, and that timetable looks to be moving up. So good news for the New York Mets and Mets fans out there. Looks like Michael Conforto is coming along nicely, and expect to see him playing He is playing in spring games. I don't know that he will break camp with the club because he missed some time, but expect to see him back with the Mets before long.
Good news for the Washington Nationals. Steven Strasburg making his final tune-up start of the spring. Fans 10 over 5 2/3 innings against the Cardinals today in Washington's 4-2 win. Really promising look at Steven Strasburg. Looking to anchor down that second spot in that rotation behind Max Scherzer.
And he did not get hit with a pitch.
He did not get hit with a pitch. Seems to be a reoccurring theme, hoping that Luis Severino can avoid that at all costs. Really the only one I care about for whatever reason.
Let's hope so.
Maybe it's because he's on my team. That could be.
So we're gonna get into talking about some award predictions now. Before we do that, I want to give a shout out to Coldwell Banker Faith Property. When it comes to buying a home in the Mohawk Valley, you gotta have faith. Coldwell Banker Properties. Call them at 315-735-2222 for commercial and residential properties. Log on to centralnyhomes.com for a complete and accurate and up-to-date listings of properties out there. And my good buddy Josh Amodio over at Priceless Inspections. A good quality home inspection is priceless. Call Josh Amodio at 315-525-8725 for your next home inspection. In-depth and detailed reports, thorough inspections, and he pays attention to details. Josh has been in the construction business his whole life, and he knows the importance of a quality home inspection. Call Josh before you put your home on the market. Looking to buy a home, or if you just want to update your home, Josh can do all of that for you. Call him today, 315-525-8725. So we're going to make some predictions here with opening day 4 days away. We're going to talk about the awards. We're going to talk about the World Series. We're going to talk about some Vegas odds and a few other random tidbits here. You want to start with the awards, or do you want to go over, run through the Vegas odds quick?
Yeah, so, me, not that I'm a degenerate gambler by any means, but I like to see what the experts think. And by experts, I mean the guys that are looking to not lose money for their casinos and for their business ventures. I put a lot of stock into what guys like Harold Reynolds and Brian Kenny think on MLB Network and where they think that teams are going to slot. But Vegas doesn't make mistakes very often that are really glaringly off of what they had predicted. Not usually anyway. So I think it's interesting to take a look before the season at what Vegas thinks every team is going to do in terms of win total. And I thought that maybe you and I could play a little over-under and run down these teams really quick. And you can give me whether or not you think they're going to be over or under the win totals that Vegas has them at. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds like a plan here. Let's run through them.
All right. So we're going to start with the A's. The Arizona Diamondbacks. They got them at 85.5. 85.5 for the Arizona Diamondbacks. What do you think about that?
I think that's like the perfect line, honestly.
You're going to see that, being a reoccurring theme, I think, here, because Vegas, as I said, Vegas doesn't make mistakes that are that glaringly off.
Yeah, like you said, these are probably going to be all pretty much dead on, where you could go either way on
we can pick out some interesting ones here.
I'll give you my, let's see. I think Arizona goes over, but not by much.
No?
I'm thinking maybe like 88 wins.
So 88 was the number that I was just about to blurt out there, because I have them winning. I got them winning that second wild card there. Or actually, I got them winning the first wild card, I think, when we went over our predictions. I would have to look again. But I know that I have them in the playoffs over the Rockies there and just behind the Dodgers. So I think that 88 to 90 wins is feasible, given what they've done in the past few years, the fact that they have one of the top 5 players in the game, in Paul Goldschmidt and a bunch of other pieces around him. I'll give them over that too. So the Atlanta Braves, 74.5.
Given the fact that Acuna will be up soon, he is only one player, but I think he's going to be a good asset to that lineup right off the bat. And again, that's pretty much right on. I'll say under by a win or two. Just because
under
of the pitching
74.5.
staff. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll give him like 73 wins.
So I think that the Braves pitching staff holds them from being a 500 team, and I would have them probably slotted around 77 wins. So I'm going to give the Braves over.
Yeah, their lineup is looking pretty good. You know, they got Freddie Freeman there, obviously.
Another guy
coming up soon. Ozzie Albies is going to be a star for
Ender
that
and
team.
Ciarte.
And Ciarte is a very underrated, good outfielder.
You know, and
so
there are a couple intriguing pitchers there. You know, outside of the guys at the top, you got guys like Foltznowitz.
And Brandon McCarthy's
Brandon
there.
McCarthy's there now too. So
who is, by the way, one of the best personalities in the game of baseball. If you ever look at Brandon McCarthy's Twitter, he's one of the best out there. It's worth checking out. Check out Brandon McCarthy's Twitter.
Brandon McCarthy, if you're listening, Sean's a big fan, and we'd like to have you call into the show. So send us a message at the baseline on Disruption Network. Brandon McCarthy, Atlanta Braves. All right, the Baltimore Orioles. Over or under 73 wins?
Over.
That's a tough one. Given the division they're playing in and the strength at the top, and what direction are the Orioles going to go in?
Well, you know they'll have a lot of wins against Tampa Bay, likely.
But what direction are they going to go in when the Manny Machado sweepstakes happens? That's really the big question there, because you're looking at a team that might win 10 games in August and September. If they trade away that guy and, you know, the bag just deflates, you're looking at a team that could just throw in the towel.
That's a good point.
So
that's why I kind of found we didn't mention Alex Cobb did sign with them. That was going to be one of my news.
Head scratcher.
Left out.
That's a head scratcher.
I was kind of, and don't get me wrong. I think he's a good pitcher, and in the contract they gave him was a little bit more than I expected.
They gave him frontline starter money, I think, or number
just
two.
The fact that they were willing to shell out some money for a guy like Alex Cobb, given the uncertainty of Manny Machado's future with the team, and some of the other things they have going on there that are question marks. I found that a little bit to be a surprising move.
It's a surprising move because you got to look at it. That's a rebuild waiting to happen. It just is. There's no way around Baltimore not rebuilding. And to have that contract that they signed with Cobb, that's not a team-friendly contract at all. Not one bit. So if you're looking at it like, you know, how we originally viewed the Phillies signing Arrieta, where we said, you know, if they're not hovering around a 500 track team around the trade deadline, they can get rid of Arrieta. That's not a valuable deal for anybody looking to add starting pitching depth come July time. So it's not like, you know, the Orioles don't have leverage with that deal. They didn't sign Alex Cobb to get him off the market and stash him and maybe use him similarly to how the Yankees utilized Aroldis Chapman. When they signed him and then they traded him and then they got him back. Not to say that the Orioles were in the market to get Alex Cobb back, but that's what you would be looking at if you're looking at, you say the Orioles, they signed Alex Cobb. Well, that's why they signed him, right? Because they're going to stash him and they're going to trade him. Well, that's not the kind of deal you sign a guy to if you want to stash him and trade him.
He's become a tougher guy to trade right now, and if there was demand for Alex Cobb at that price, he would have signed a lot sooner. There would have been a lot more interest in other teams signing him to a similar contract. Not to say that you can't trade him, you know, at the deadline if there's a team that is desperate for starter help and they miss out on say your Chris Archers or some of the other arms on the market. You know, a team might get desperate and pick up a Cobb, especially if he looks good. I mean, he is a big question mark coming off that injury. But yeah, that's a deal that
the years more than the money.
They kind of handcuff themselves on that one, and yeah, I don't see Cobb being a trade piece.
Baltimore Orioles. What are you guys thinking there?
Somebody gets really desperate.
I just don't understand that move. I didn't understand it when it first broke and we talked about it. I didn't understand it when I found out the years that were assigned to it. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a team that's absolutely destined to have to rebuild. But maybe they're looking at, you know, like you just said, he's a good pitcher when he's healthy. The injury was a concern, but you know, you got him with Gausman and Bundy, and maybe that's a core of younger, you know, starters, you know, in the 26 to 30-year-old range. But you know, where's the light at the end of the tunnel for the Orioles if there is one? when they trade Manny Machado.
It just seems like the pitching never works out in Baltimore. It's been since like Mike Mussina since they had like a legit top end.
And he didn't win
pitcher.
anything either. It's really been since the Jim Palmer days for them.
I mean, you look at Arrieta was there and he struggled and left and became
a superstar. He became
a
Jake
Cy Young
Arrieta,
winning pitcher. And then you look at Gossman and Bundy, who were a few years ago among the most heralded young arms in the game, and they're solid pitchers, but they haven't done anything compared to what their expectations were. So I don't know what it is in Baltimore.
Where's Eric Bedard? We
there's another blast from the past there.
We need to mention Eric Bedard maybe on every show because Eric Bedard probably needs the mention, I think.
If you're out there, Eric Bedard, call in. We'd love to talk to you.
You and Brandon McCarthy. We'll double team you and Brandon McCarthy, and we'll pick your brains. But seriously, that's a head scratcher for the Orioles. Not to beat a dead horse, but it just is. I don't understand that at all, and I'm glad that we got to Alex Cobb because I totally had forgotten that we were going to do that. Back to some over-unders. Let's get to some of the big dogs here, okay? Who would you think, knowing what you know in your all omniscient ways, who would you think that coming into this season Vegas has as the favorite?
I would guess the Houston Astros.
And you would guess correctly. Where would you slot the Houston Astros? And I'll tell you what Vegas has.
For an over-under for wins?
For wins.
I'd put them at 96.
My man. So Vegas has them at 96.5. So you're putting them under then, right?
I'm putting the Houston Astros over. I think they're a 100-win team.
I do too. I honestly, if I had to slot them right now, I would take. Nobody wins 100 games. It's very few and far between that somebody actually goes and does it. It's usually 98, 99 leading the league. A couple years here, we've had teams get to 104 and 105, but it's such an anomaly for a team to get to 100 wins. So for me to go out on a limb and say Houston's going to win 102 games is kind of not realistic.
They did win 101 last year.
I think that they're a 102, 101 win team again this year. They've only strengthened themselves. Verlander for a whole year and Garrett Cole and not missing any pieces out of that lineup. A lineup that includes the AL MVP and guys like Alex Bregman and George Springer, Carlos Correa, and even role players like Evan Gaddis,
Josh Reddick. You could keep going on and on.
What's his name? With the
Brian McCann.
Well, McCann. There's another guy. Yuli Gurriel. There's another one. Or not? Who? It's Yuli Gurriel. Right?
Yep, Gurriel. Yep.
There's a couple Yulis, and I gotta try to keep them straight because it's not a common name.
Two Yulis.
The two what? The two Yulis. It's gonna be my new fantasy team, but I don't have either one of them on my team. So yeah, 96.5 wins. Vegas is lofty expectations. Coming in next, we have a couple teams tied in the Chicago Cubs, the Cleveland Indians, and the New York Yankees are all tied for that second place role. But a full 2 wins behind the Houston Astros at 94.5. So what do you think? We'll start off with the Yankees, 94.5 wins. Coming into it, I want to say, the Yankees, that's a 110-win team, right? When you look at it, but that's also not realistic, to be anywhere near 110 wins. But, conservative estimate, you have to have them below Houston. You just do. It's just the nature of the beast. Looking at what Houston did last year, in Houston, surmounting the Yankees prior to going and winning the World Series. So you got to have them below, but a full 2 wins. I don't know. I don't know if the Yankees are a 2-win team below Houston right now on paper. But 94, it's a pretty good estimate. What do you got for the Yanks? Under or over 94.5?
Well, I'm going to kind of cop out a little bit on this and throw the health caveat on that because that's going to be a big question for every team, obviously. And the Yankees already are dealing with some injuries to Greg Bird and Clint Frazier and among others. They did win 91 games last year, and that was prior to the addition of the National League MVP. So I'm going to give them over 94 wins.
I love it. So we'll get to the Chicago Cubs now. All right. Maybe, perhaps, you got a World Series hangover last year. maybe chalk it up to that. Really, all the pieces are there from that World Series team, other than Arrieta and Aroldis Chapman, obviously not there. Leaning on Brandon Morrow to be the closer, but you don't see many save situations happening in Chicago this year the way that lineup sets up.
You really don't,
in that Central Division as well. 94.5. I would say that they're probably an over team at that number, but I want to hear what you got to say on that.
That's a tough call. Again, like we said, a lot of these numbers are right on, Vegas, the way they do things, where they're all going to be tough calls. And I love the Chicago Cubs this year. I really do. But I'll just to play devil's advocate, I'll go under. And the reasoning being there's a couple pretty good teams in that division. The Milwaukee Brewers are much improved. You could see them stealing some extra wins away from the Cubs this year potentially. The Cardinals are always right there. The Reds, solid lineup. They could steal a couple wins from the Cubs. I'm not expecting much out of them.
We're going to talk about the Reds too, and we're going to talk about them soon.
In Pittsburgh, yeah, I mean they're looked at as a bottom feeder team right now, but they have some solid players there too that could develop and end up being decent. And again, I'm not saying they're going to be a good team, but overall, top to bottom, that is one of the better divisions in baseball. And I fully expect the Cubs to win the division. And they won 92 games last year, and I would expect they're going to be right around that same 92 wins.
So you got them under. Cleveland Indians, the last of the the favorites, if you will, at 94.5. Obviously we said that Houston 2 wins above that, but at 94.5, Cleveland Indians. What do you got on them?
I give them an easy over on that. I think they're going to be right there, high 90s win team. They won 102 last year, which I think was tops in baseball or in the American League. Just one win ahead of the Houston
They
Astros.
won a few in a row last year. I know.
Yeah,
that.
just a couple in a row last year. I think Cleveland is easily a high 90s win team.
Some interesting predictions here. They got the Boston Red Sox at 91.5. So really kind of undervalued. I of all the easy ones to say, I would say that the Red Sox over 91.5 is glaring there. So if you guys are betting guys out there, look at the Red Sox there at 91.5 because
I can certainly get on board with that. They won 93 last year,
and they're improved this year.
JD Martinez is there,
and Devers is there for an entire
year. A full year.
So that's an improved squad right there. There's no way that the Red Sox lose that many games.
One of the best starters in the game, one of the best closers in the game, and a pretty good starting pitching staff. Once you get past Sale, there's really not a lot of star power there in their rotation, but they have some pretty good starting pitching depth.
Yeah, and speaking of Craig Kimbrell, not to go off on a tangent here, but speaking of Craig Kimbrell, Craig Kimbrell and his wife are dealing with some health concerns with their young daughter, and kind of just want to send good wishes out there to the Boston Red Sox closer. Not an easy thing to deal with health concerns with anybody, but especially when it's your child. And
especially when you're a professional athlete and you're away from home a lot of the time. And
so big
saw
prayers
Travis
out there.
Shaw go through something similar last year, and he did say that he found that when he was playing on the road, that he was able to focus a little bit more, because when he was home, he was in and out of the hospital constantly, and obviously family is top priority, and makes it tough to focus on your job no matter what you do if you're in that situation. So, best wishes to the Kimbrell family out there, and I hope everything turns out okay there.
Getting back into these these predictions here, let's look at some of the bottom teams and let's really diagnose. It's not hard to try to guess, sitting across from me here, who Vegas has as the lowest win total in the league. I'm sure that you can figure that one out pretty quickly.
I'll go with Tampa Bay.
Ooh.
That's my pick.
Yeah.
For worst.
The funny thing is that the Tampa Bay's not even close.
Really?
Not even close.
That's surprising to me.
Yep. So There's only like 5 teams in the 60 win range, and the Miami Marlins are 64.5 wins.
The other Florida team.
The other Florida team with the fire sale. 64.5 wins for Miami, which is probably maybe even too high. You know, you're looking at a 100-loss team in Florida, in Miami. Sorry for your luck, folks, but that's definitely a 100-loss team.
Well, you got Derek Jeter at least.
So if you're a betting man out there and you're looking for some futures action, go on the under with Miami. I think 64.5 wins is probably 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 wins. If you look at what Houston had to go through years ago, you know, it's probably upwards of 5 or 6 wins too high for them. The Cincinnati Reds. I want to get mad for a minute here. All right, the Cincinnati Reds. This 73.5 wins. What do you think about 73.5 wins for the Cincinnati Reds?
I think it's about right, honestly. They won 68 last year.
It bothers me. It bothers me. And it's not because I'm a Reds fan or anything like that. It's just look at this lineup that they're parading out there that you're only giving them 73 wins. All right. Adam Duvall, Billy Hamilton, Schiebler, Suarez, Peraza, Scooter Gennett, Joey Votto, Barnhart. You know, obviously the rotation is very suspect.
I was going to say, what do you have for starting rotation?
It just is, but
there?
Look at that lineup that they parade out there.
It's a good lineup.
It's a great lineup.
With an MVP right in the middle of the lineup.
MVP right in the middle of the lineup. You know, arguably the fastest guy in the Major League Baseball, playing center field and stealing bases. Schiebler and Duvall and Suarez with just tremendous upsides in terms of power. How are you slotting them there? You know, Raisel Iglesias down there sealing it up, one of the better younger closers in the game. But you start off and, you know, you got Homer Bailey. That's your number one starter.
There's your problem.
And that's the problem. You know, DeSclafani and Castillo and Mail and Romano, you know, does not an ace rotation make.
And I really like Luis Castillo, and I think he could be an ace. But, yeah, I mean, top to bottom, that starting rotation it leaves a lot to be desired.
I think the Reds are a 500 team.
If you're going to be in a division competing with the Cubs, Brewers, and Cardinals, and that's a tough starting pitching rotation to go into the season with.
But for your
Sclafani, I think, is hurt right now.
For your third and fourth and fifth starters in some cases for the Cubs and for the Cardinals and for the Pirates and for the Brewers to face that lineup 2 times in a series potentially if you don't have Quintana going, you know, I don't know. I reserve rights on the Cincinnati Reds to be a 500 team, so I'm going well over 73.5 wins for the
Let's
Cincinnati
mark that one
Reds.
down. That'll be a fun one to come back to
right.
at the end of the season.
That's one that kind of upsets me, just because if you look at that lineup, and also you know, maybe not upsetting to a degree that Cincinnati upsets me, but the Chicago White Sox at 68 wins. I think that the Chicago White Sox are a better team than 68.
I'll go over on that one.
You know, another interesting team with, you know, we mentioned Yohan Moncada earlier, one of the top prospects in the game.
And
but
it's another
team
with starting pitching question marks. I mean, James Shields.
But not for long.
But not for long.
You
got Lucas Giolito there. You got
Michael
Reynaldo Lopez
Michael
there.
Kopech coming up.
And then you got Kopech, who's going to be starting the season in the minors, who will be up this season
you
at
know,
some point. So that's
the other Fulmer there is there. Jose Abreu and Evisel Garcia, Tim Anderson. That's just it's another team with a tremendous wealth of younger talent on their team, and I think that younger talent is closer to being major league ready than a lot of teams are.
Absolutely, and then that's not even considering some of the guys they have in the minor leagues. Luis Robert and Eloy Jimenez, who's a guy they got in a trade last year from the Cubs. They're set up to be a very good team in the near future, and it's
Wellington Castillo.
It's not going to be this year, but it's not going to be too long before you start seeing the Chicago White Sox.
I don't think it's going to be this year either, but I don't think that they're a 68-win team. I don't.
I'll give them an over.
I would go over on that one as well. So again, if you guys are out there, these really low ones are ones that are intriguing, because I would go lower on the Miami Marlins, but I would definitely go higher on the Chicago White Sox. Interesting enough that you had said Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay not even Not even close to being the lowest. Let me pull up Tampa Bay.
The two
here.
Florida teams in my mind
Tampa
are
Bay,
the worst.
Tampa Bay is an easy
teams.
under for me. An easy under at 77.5.
Oh, that's a way easy under, especially, if they do get into selling mode, which they already are, and start trading a guy like Chris Archer and depleting their team even further, at least at their current state of their team. So I don't see them coming close to 77 wins.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are the interesting ones there. San Diego, another team that's under 70, maybe a better team than 69.5 wins, given the pieces that they've added. But that's another tough division. Los Angeles Dodgers, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the Dodgers. The Dodgers are the co-favorites with the Houston Astros at 96.5 wins. And again, tough to say that that's not an accurate number. And another one tough to say that they're not going to go over that amount of wins at 96.
Yeah, and they had 104 wins last year.
So, they got the Dodgers and the Astros on the top tier, and then on the second shelf down, the Indians and the Yankees and the Cubs and the Nationals.
What do they have for the Mets?
The Mets, New York Mets. What do you think the New York Mets are going to be?
I'd put the Mets, if I was making a line, I'd give it 80.
You, my friend, have missed. You have missed your calling. All right, because you should be in Vegas handicapping the New York Mets win total, because you are almost spot on.
And just to be clear,
Vegas,
I have not seen these numbers.
Vegas has the New York Mets at a straight 500 team. They got them at 81 wins. 81 wins if you manage it. So if you're slotted as an 81 team here, and you really catch lightning in a bottle and have your 5 rotation guys gel and do what they, certainly have the potential to do, because this is the first time that you're ever going to have Syndergaard, DeGrom, Matz, Wheeler, and Harvey in the same rotation.
They did send Wheeler down this weekend, which it looks like it's going to be a temporary thing. Let him get down there. Matz turned it on.
Healthy anyway.
Unexpectedly, in my opinion, the last couple weeks, and ended up having a good spring training after he started out terrible. And then Wheeler had a couple rough outings, and they decided to roll with Matz because he looks healthy and send Wheeler down to get some innings in the minor leagues. But the way things have gone for the Mets, you got to expect Wheeler's going to be up before long. And if they can stay healthy, I think the Mets can be an easy over on that 81 projection. That rotation is just phenomenal health pending.
I got an easy over on the Mets. We already talked about that. I reserve rights on the Mets in our first show. I think that they're in for good things, potentially. Added some really good pieces into that lineup. Health concerns with Conforto aren't as bad as they could have been. The whole staff is healthy. They added Jay Bruce and Todd Frazier. Cespedes, really the big question mark coming in.
And he's playing again, and he
playing.
Seems to be past the early spring health
I think
issues.
that lineup and the potential ceiling for that pitching staff is just too good and too high to have them as an 81 team. So I got the Mets as an easy over. I think that the Mets, honestly, are going to contend for that second wild card and be in the 88 to 89 win range.
So a couple other teams that you've talked about quite a bit there that are a little bit interesting coming into the season. I'm curious where they have the Philadelphia Phillies and the Minnesota Twins on there.
So I had done this before the Phillies made this move today. I don't know if that bumped it or did anything significant, but they have them at 75.5. So
they're already looking at a major jump because they had 66 wins last year.
Yes, and if you look at what the Phillies have done or hadn't done prior, what they had in February or January, I would bet you had we looked at this in January, they would have been around the 66, 67 mark. So jumping them up 8 wins there, probably with the signings of Arrieta and Carlos Santana, and now Kingery. What was the other team that you said?
The Minnesota Twins.
The
I'll go over on the Philadelphia Phillies.
I'll go over too. I like that. The Twins. The Minnesota Twins,
It's a
they
team
have
coming off an 85-win season in
85
2017.
wins last year. They have them under that. They have them at 82 and a half. I got to say that I like that win total
I do too.
for the Twins.
I do too.
I don't see them repeating. They're an interesting team in the Central. All right. They're an interesting team in their division. It's a given, but I just see the top tier of the junior circuit just being heads and tails still above the Minnesota Twins. So I don't see them repeating to the playoffs. I also see them as a 4 or 5 win less team as Vegas does. So 82.5 for the Twins. We both agree that that's probably spot on. But I'll play devil's advocate and I'll give them under.
I'll go over. You know what? Some of that young talent they have there. I mean, I think that's a good number to project, but I think some of those young guys, Byron Buxton and Jose Barrios, Sano, if he can keep himself out of trouble and stay healthy. They're missing their shortstop now. Polanco is going to be missing half the season because of a PED suspension, but they have some guys that they can kind of plug in there to get by until the middle of the season. And they signed Lance Lynn, and I think they'll be just over that. They had 85 wins last year and made the playoffs, and I'm thinking about the same for them this year.
One more, we'll do one more because I glanced at this and thought it was pretty interesting. Where would you slot the Seattle Mariners, you think? Mr. Handicapper Man, Sean Patrick, Ace Rothstein Gaffney?
That is a tough one, but I like Seattle's roster. I think they have a good pitching staff. They have a good closer. They have a really good lineup, and I would slot them at 83.5.
83.5. So you're a little over what Vegas thinks, but you're a little under what I think. I had Seattle winning that second wild card, as I had said in our first show. I project them to be about an 85 or 86 win team, 87 perhaps. Right around that number is going to be the second wild card probably in the American League. Vegas has them at 81.5, so just above a 500 team. I just think that lineup is too good, and the top of the rotation. Obviously Felix Hernandez is a question mark, but
I saw today he is expected to start on opening day.
We're not talking about, he's no spring chicken by any means, but I think he's like 34 years old. All right. Maybe perhaps he can go through like a CC Sabathia or Tom Glavine type renaissance where you go from being so dominant in the beginning of your career and then, you go through a rough patch for 2 or 3 years while you figure out how to pitch.
That's a tough thing for a pitcher to transition and become a finesse pitcher, more of a pitcher than just a fireballer. And yeah, you've seen it with CC where he went through a few years of some down years and figured it out, and still a quality arm. And I'm not going to write off King Felix just yet, but he's going to have to make that adjustment into recreating himself in this new mold of the second part of his career.
And then their number 2 guy, in our eyes, number 1 guy, but sentiment would have you slotting, Felix Hernandez into that number 1 role or ace role, even though he's not. But maybe one of the top 4 or 5 left-handed pitchers in the game, James Paxton, possesses a big arm with a lot of upside. 10.3 or 10.7 strikeouts per 9 innings. The metrics are off the chart for James Paxton in a smaller sample size. But they got guys like Zunino and Kyle Seager and Segura and, Ben Gamble and D. Gordon's there now, and Robinson Cano and Ryan Healy, another interesting guy who had a pretty good year last year. Mitch Haniger, Nelson Cruz as the DH. That's a potent lineup. That might be the best lineup outside of Houston in that AL West. Maybe one of the top 6 or 7 in the league. You follow that up with Hernandez and James Paxton, and then they added Mike Leake there. Edwin Diaz as your closer, a couple of veteran guys down there like Mark Zepchinski. They added Nick Vincent and Juan Nicasio.
There's another guy there, too. I think he's their 4th starter, Marco Gonzalez, who I think you could see making some news this year. He's had a great spring, and for him to be a fourth starter, if he does anything remotely close to what he's done in spring training, then that really solidifies the back end of that staff there.
So I think it's safe to say that both of us are going to go over on 81 wins for the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah.
So maybe some of these aren't so close like we thought they were going to be, because I think there's some easy overs and some really easy unders there. So if you're out there and you're of the betting persuasion and you want to go take a look, these are from Vegas Insider. Downloaded them today, so I don't see much flux today. If you want to go take a look at these and see where you got, text it to us. Send us a message on the baseline. Let us know where you got your favorite team slotted and what you think about Vegas's prediction for that. But right now we are going to get into our next segment called 3 Up and 3 Down, where we have our resident fantasy baseball expert, Sean Patrick Gaffney, give 3 players to look out for in the fantasy world and give 3 players to stay away from. What do you got for 3 Up, 3 Down this week,
3
SPG?
Up, 3 Down. So the idea behind this segment is JP said, is to talk about guys who are trending down and guys who are trending up. So my 3 Up, the 3 trending up guys, I've got a guy we talked about already and who made major headlines today, Scott Kingery. I think he's got the talent to be a difference maker basically for free in fantasy baseball. I don't think he was really drafted anywhere except for very deep leagues and maybe some NL-only leagues. A guy who in the minors last year went over 25 stolen bases and home runs. You could see him moving around the infield too and being eligible at multiple spots. He's second base right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see him coming up with third base eligibility here, especially if a guy like Michael Franco struggles out of the gate. You might see Kingery slide over to that spot and become their full-time third baseman. Same thing goes for JP Crawford. You could see Kingery take some at-bats from him, and Cesar Hernandez as well, the second baseman. So you could see Kingery filling in for those guys quite a bit and potentially being a starter at one of those positions. At the very least, he is going to get his playing time by giving some of these guys a day off when they need a breather or if they start struggling. And, for a middle infielder to have that kind of talent to be a potential, we'll say 2020 guy in the majors, then it's a no-brainer to look at him. If he's out there, if you play fantasy baseball and he is on your waiver wire, stop what you're doing right now and go pick up Scott Kingery. Go pick him up right now.
You don't sign a guy to that kind of deal. You don't take a pre-ARB eligible guy and go all in on him if you're not going to have him be a part of your roster that year. So I think you're absolutely right. And I heeded Sean's advice prior to him even giving it, and I picked up Scott Kingery today. It was an easy call for me as soon as I knew that he was going to be starting on that team. A lot of good guys, as we talked about the Phillies a couple times, just because of how intriguing they are. A lot of good guys around Kingery to show him the ways in Philly, and you're looking at a potential impact player within the next season. So Scott Kingery,
he could be a key part of that lineup. By mid-season, he could be one of their top players. And with young players, you could see some adjustment time, but they gave him that contract, and they're going to be patient with him, and they are going to give him an opportunity to play somewhere. There's no doubt about it.
And moving on.
I got another guy that I saw you picked up this week who is having a phenomenal spring.
Oh, it's got to be my boy out of
Yonder
Cleveland.
Alonso, a guy out of Miami.
The U.
One of your guys from the U. He's in Cleveland now. It's the first time he has gone into a season as a regular on a quality team with a good lineup.
An above quality team,
the quality is probably the
it's not even
of the
close
year for that
to what he's ever been used to.
He's going to be the everyday first baseman. There might be some times where you'll see him sit against lefties.
Is Bandic out there?
I don't know if Dave's tuned in or not. I'd like to hear his feedback on Yonder Alonso if he is. But I think that was, beyond fantasy baseball, I think that was a great pickup for the Indians to just slot in there at first base. And he went on a tear last year at one point. I don't know if you remember, but
I do. I had him.
He went on an absolute tear in the middle of the season, and he kind of tailed off, and then he got traded to Seattle and had some struggles there. It was still good, but he had a little bit of struggles there. And, the guy that has a history of playing for Oakland last year, who was not very good. Before that, he was in San Diego He kind of bounced around and was on teams with weak lineups. But that's a guy with elite power who is, as of yesterday anyway, I didn't see what happened today, but he is leading the major leagues in home runs in the spring, crushing the ball. He's batting well over 300, and he's going to be right probably mid to second part of that lineup, say maybe fifth or sixth. Sixth there. And it is such a deep lineup that even if he is hitting, we'll say sixth, there's plenty of talent in front of him that are going to get on the base, on the bases, and be there for him to drive in and get some RBIs and some fantasy points for you. So
my University of Miami alum.
So
Yonder
he's
Alonso.
major trending up, in my opinion, and I think that was a shrewd pickup there.
Hey, thanks. I do what I can.
As a team,
the fantasy experts telling me I'm doing stuff right, boys and girls.
You were looking for first base help.
I was.
Before that,
I was trying to wheel and deal for Greg Bird. Good thing I didn't do that.
I think that's probably.
Hey, what do you think about that, Bandic? Right now, I could have had Greg Bird, and you could have had Yonder Alonso.
Yeah, maybe you can maybe buy low on Greg Bird. Trade him Yonder Alonso. See what you think.
Cody Allen's not going to be involved in that deal anymore, Dave. Sorry for your luck.
So Dave's going to like this one, too, because my third of the three up is also a Cleveland Indian.
Oh.
And this is a guy
He's loving it right now.
I picked up in the fantasy baseball draft that we had last week. Pitcher Mike Clevenger, I really like this year.
Filth.
Here's an interesting stat on Mike Clevenger. Last year, there were 4 pitchers in baseball that had a better K per 9 and OPS against than Mike Clevenger. That's
just
it.
4?
4.
Can I name them?
Go ahead.
Clayton Kershaw.
He's one.
Robbie Ray.
No.
James Paxton.
No.
Luis Severino.
No.
Noah Syndergaard.
No.
Amazing. So we're talking about Clevin, some really good competition, or
Kershaw,
really good. Okay.
Corey Kluber, Chris Sale,
Max Scherzer,
and Max Scherzer.
Okay.
Were the only.
So the 4 best pitchers.
And granted, it was a limited sample size.
The 4 best pitchers in Major League Baseball,
he only played about half
and
the
then
season.
Clevenger.
And then Clevenger.
So that's
he
what
only
you're saying.
pitched about half the season, and some of that was out of the bullpen. But yeah, the numbers there were elite, and having a pitcher like that with that Cleveland Indians offense to back him. You mentioned Robbie Ray. I think Clevenger is a guy that you could see have like
a Robbie Ray type season.
Ray type jump. He could be like a right-handed Robbie Ray. So we'll see what happens there. I really like his upside, and I think he could do some good things on that amazing Cleveland team this year.
So recapping our 3 up, if you are just joining us, that's Scott Kingery, second baseman, or perhaps utility infielder out of the Philadelphia Phillies. Yonder Alonso, first baseman from the Cleveland Indians, and hitting the Cleveland Indians again and talking about Mike Clevenger. Interesting.
I'll give one quick honorable mention, too, that I actually had in there before the Scott Kingery making the roster news. Ozzie Albies of the Atlanta Braves.
That's another one of your guys, though.
Another one of my guys. I thought he was actually drafted in our league.
Which is surprising that he's not. And the fact that after 25 rounds and 250 picks, you were able to go and grab Ozzie Albies is not a very good testament to some of us.
I don't know if I overheard somebody just mention his name or what, but I had him crossed off on our list. So after the draft, when I looked at the available players, I saw Ozzie Albies there, and I jumped on him. And I have Altuve at second base, but that still didn't detract me from adding another potential elite second baseman. I don't know if he'll be elite this year, but he's going to be there someday.
A lot of fantasy strategy out there that I read, at least, and you're the expert, and I don't claim to be, but a lot of fantasy experts out there are really of the assumption with your draft that you should draft best available as many times as you can and then wheel and deal off the waiver wire and with other people in your league. So harp on that best available type thing. So I'm surprised that Ozzie Albies sat around as long as he did.
Yeah,
I took Joe Panic with Mr. Irrelevant with my last pick, and Ozzie Albies was sitting there. So not really a good testament of how good I was being for that draft and studying, but 3 very good ups, my friend. So what do we got for 3 down? Who are we staying away from this week?
3 down, and this guy is another guy that I drafted on Sunday, and I was very disappointed in the news that he's going to be out for up to 2 months. Madison Bumgarner. Man.
You heard of the Madden curse, right?
Yeah, the Mad Bum
It's the Mad Bum curse.
Dirt bikes and pinkies.
Dirt bikes and flying baseballs. That's it.
So, yeah, we touched on him earlier, and he's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. Broken pinky, comeback line drive that hit him just right in the pinky, and he had to have surgery. He was somebody that already had some question marks because of missing a lot of last year. And it's disappointing, you know, as a fan of baseball to not have him out there to watch. You know, some of the stuff he's done in the World Series over the years. He was just a really entertaining guy to watch, and it's a shame for the Giants and for fantasy owners like myself who drafted him. I drafted him in the 3rd round, and now I'm gonna have to figure out a backup plan here for the next month or so, and hope he comes back strong. I mean, we'll see where he's at after coming back from this. This is obviously going to prevent him from throwing a ball for a while. And he could potentially be the mad bum that we've all come to expect, an elite top of the rotation starter later in the season, but there is also a good chance that he comes back and this, you know, month and a half, 2-month stretch of him not being able to throw at full strength could set him back for even longer than that. So we'll see what happens there. So my second guy is another pitcher, and he was expected to be the closer for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's going to start the season on the disabled list. Luke Gregerson. He looked like he could be a good source of saves. Now these other guys like Dominic Leone and Tyler Lyons are going to get a leg up on him and get the first crack at being the closer there. So Luke Gregerson's stock is down. If these other guys struggle, maybe they bring him back into that role in a few weeks once the hamstring injury heals up. But it's a big question mark right now. And my third of the 3 down is an outfielder for the Arizona Diamondbacks, which they just acquired not too long ago, a couple weeks ago. Maybe a month ago now, and a 30 home run bat, young guy, Steven Souza. He's going to miss some time with injury. He looks like a guy you can probably cut loose, and tying back into some of the moves you've made. I saw you cut Steven Souza. I think it was actually for Yonder Alonso.
It was.
So good move there. You dropped a 3 down, and you got a 3 up.
You like that?
Yeah.
I was really excited when you went over your 3 up with me, and I had 2 on there. I was really excited. The prospects for this season are getting better as the waiver wire continues to flash in front of my eyes, and I see guys like Schiebler and Duvall, and I just scratch my head. So anybody listening that's in our EC league that doesn't perpetually year in and year out kick my ass, go look at some of the guys that are on our waiver wire and really examine your roster, because you're messing up if we got some of these guys still on the waiver wire. But I don't have any room for them, and I'm looking at the guys with the upside that check off a lot of boxes. But if you're looking for some pop, Adam Duvall, he's sitting there. So 3 up, 3 down.
3 up, 3 down, and yeah, like we mentioned, and hopefully some of you tuned in, we had our fantasy baseball draft. The 15th annual Electric Company Fantasy Baseball Draft was a week ago today, and we had a good time. And you want to talk a little bit real quick before we move on
before we get into the 7th inning stretch
about some of the teams and some of the picks that we liked?
Yeah, absolutely. I liked some of mine, and I really regret some of mine as well. But overall, I gotta like where my pitching staff sits. My top 4 are Severino and Thor, and Lance McCullers Jr. and James Paxton. So going into the season with those 4 eating up the majority of my innings, I'm kind of stoked about that. I did have the first pick. I ended up with Mike Trout.
Can't go wrong there.
You can't go wrong there. And then with my 4th pick, I ended up grabbing JD Martinez, which was kind of a steal there. So, I'm really excited. I got Rafael Devers, a guy with a lot of people being high on him. I ended up being able to grab him. And late round guys that I was really happy to grab were like, Jay Bruce, Scooter Gennett, guys with, potential maybe 30 home runs, 90 RBIs, going to strike out a little bit and not really too much in the on-base percentage world, but fill-in guys nonetheless. Justin Bauer, another guy that I was able to grab late. So I'm excited, I guess. I got a decent team.
So I had the 4th pick, and I didn't think I had any chance at getting Jose Altuve, but Mookie Betts went 2nd, our commish, Eric Leo, took Clayton Kershaw third, which I had a feeling Kershaw might go in front of me because it was somebody I was looking at potentially drafting at number 4 once I found out where I was picking. But I did not expect Jose Altuve to be there at number 4, so I jumped on Altuve,
Obviously.
the AL MVP at 4th.
Obviously.
I was really happy with that, especially, second base is traditionally a weaker position overall. Maybe not so much anymore compared to what it used to be, but an MVP caliber player at number 4 at second base, I couldn't pass up Altuve. And then I went a little bit early on this next guy compared to some of these projections you see, but in this format especially, and with the weak pool of catchers, I couldn't pass up on Gary Sanchez. I think I had picked number 17 in the second round.
Well, he was going with my next pick anyway, about 3 or 4 picks
and that was
after
part
you.
of my
so
strategy. I knew Eric Leo had 2 picks before my next one, and you as well. Two guys that know the Yankees
gone.
very well.
Well, not even being a homer, but that's the most valuable catcher in the major leagues in terms of fantasy value
and it's not even
in
really
real
close.
life value.
It's not even really close right now.
It's not close at all.
So I picked him a little bit early compared to some of the rankings you'll see, but I had to do it. I figured I'd lock up that catcher spot instead of having to worry about grabbing a couple, mid to lower tier guys and having to worry about streaming them for the rest of the season. So I got an elite bat at catcher. I got some other good bats up towards the top of the draft. Josh Donaldson, Christian Yelich, who I really like this year.
How could you not?
Edwin
just
Encarnacion.
really love Christian Yelich, right?
We've talked about the Indians ad nauseum today for all the same reasons we've already mentioned about loving the Indians. That lineup with Edwin Encarnacion in it, as long as he stays healthy again, that's always the big thing. Tommy Pham in outfield, who had a really good year last year in the 2/3
Can he repeat
of the
it?
season.
That's the question.
Can he
with
repeat
Tommy
it is the
Pham.
big question.
Yep.
And I'm skeptical of it, but where I ended up getting him in the draft, I want to say it was probably closing in on round 10, and I had only had Yelich at outfield. I figured I'd take a flyer there. Matt Olson, a guy with elite power in Oakland, is my next outfielder and also first base eligible. And I picked Matt Carpenter because I love the versatility of first, second, third base eligibility. Throw him in my utility spot, and then anybody gets injured at those other positions, I just plug Matt Carpenter right in there. My bench bats, Ozzie Albies, who I really like, Nomar Mazara, JT Realmuto, who is injured, but he's another solid catcher. Probably start the season on the DL, but a little bit of insurance. I got him close to round 18, I want to say.
I got Yasmani Grandal with one of my last picks too. So,
and that's another,
just insurance.
Same type of idea there.
Yep.
I picked up Zach Cozart, who I think is going to be hitting 6th in the Angels lineup. He'll be shortstop and third base eligible. And then I ended up picking up Michael Brantley after the draft, who has looked pretty good since he came back in spring training last week.
Most surprising pick in our league, I think, was I think he went 9th, was Bryce Harper.
I was surprised he went that late.
He stuck around
also,
for quite some time.
Trey Turner went like 15th.
Yep.
That's
Aaron
the guy
Judge
I had as a mid-first rounder.
Aaron Judge lasted around a few times too,
so
which is surprising.
Crawdad picking up Trey Turner in the second round was outstanding.
Yes,
value.
that's a huge because a lot of the leagues and a lot of projections that we see out there and some of the groups that we're in have Trey Turner as high as 2 and 3 and 4. And so to pick him up in that number round, not even that number pick, but to pick him up, in the round that everybody thought he was going to be that number pick, that's pretty good value for Trey Turner there.
So my pitching staff, unfortunately, I picked Madison Bumgarner as my ace in the 3rd round. We all know how that went. We've discussed that plenty already.
As good as it went for Dave last year with the motorbike.
Hopefully not that bad. Hopefully I can get some value out of him. I didn't pick him second
6
overall.
to 8 weeks.
Dave.
You're just saving innings there. That's all. When he comes back, he's going to be an impact arm. So
I got Dallas Keuchel, Jake Arrieta, Luis Castillo of the Reds, Mike Clevenger, Kenta Maeda, Garrett Richards, and then relief pitching Roberto Osuna, Brandon Morrow of the Cubs, and Blake Parker of the Angels, who is a question mark right now. But
he slotted, I believe, Closer Monkey had him number 1. in that hierarchy, but possibly splitting some saves up with Cam.
We'll see
Cam
what happens
Bergerozzi
with Cam
in there.
Bergerozzi there.
But you're good with Brandon Morrow. Brandon Morrow's going to start the season as the closer for one of the best teams in the league. I did the similar type thing. I tried to grab some guys that were maybe question marks. I got to roll this Vizcaíno. He's probably on that third or fourth tier of closers. I got Cody Allen. He's my only one that's up towards the top. And then I just took a flyer with a bunch of guys like Greg Holland, who's not currently on a major league roster, but if he gets signed, he's going to be a closer somewhere.
Yeah, you could see him with the Angels or Texas or St. Louis.
Even though Texas has said they're out, consistently. How long are they going to go with the Keone Keela experiment, or potentially like they're kicking around Tim Lincecum as their closer or as a potential closer there. So Holland makes sense in a place like that. Maybe even where we just talked about with Gregerson starting on the DL. Maybe that pushes the Cardinals to make a move on Holland. And I got Archie Bradley, who's a question mark as if he's even going to close. But that's what I did. I tried to buff up the back end of my rotation. Saves and wins are very huge in our league. Saves and wins versus innings pitched. So I picked up a guy like Chad Green really early. I picked him up, but that's a guy that could, he could go pitch 2 innings and pick up a win and 6 strikeouts, and that's a really valuable 2 innings when you're playing 1,275 for the year. That's a valuable 2 innings. There's a lot of value in that time that he just pitched and the time that he didn't tick away from your total clock playing in a points league like that.
So some of the other teams, some of the picks I really liked was Z, actually. He picked Nolan Arenado 7th overall, which is somebody I had as a number 3 or 4 guy.
Yep.
And then he ended up getting Bryce Harper actually 14th overall.
14th.
So he ended up getting Nolan Arenado and Bryce Harper in the first couple rounds, and then he gets Steven Strasburg in the third
crazy.
round. So I really like the top of Z's draft.
Agreed.
I like what Eric Leo did. Clayton Kershaw in the first round, which was something I was considering.
I did it last year.
He got to me at 4. And then he picked Anthony Rizzo at 18, who is eligible at second base. So that's a real nice guy to slot into your second base spot.
Another good draft there.
And then he ended up getting Manny Machado in the 3rd round. So I really like what Leo did there too. So, and then another pick I really liked was Caleb picking Francisco Lindor in the 4th round. I couldn't believe he lasted to the 4th round. I wanted to kick myself that I didn't take him in the 3rd, especially looking back now, taking Madison Bumgarner in the 3rd.
Yeah, but I liked my first 4 picks. I wouldn't trade my first 4 picks in for the world, I don't think.
So that was a fun day as always. We had a good
great
time.
So
it's gonna be a fun season. We'll keep everybody kind of posted on some of the ongoings in our league throughout the season, and we're looking forward to it, man.
I'm looking forward to the season. And before we get into our 7th inning stretch, let's get back and rein it in back to something that we were doing in our first hour here, and let's get our predictions down for the postseason awards and who you got winning the World Series.
Yes,
that's who I want to know.
Let's do that. We need to do that today. We got opening day coming up Thursday, so let's get those picks done.
Let's start off in the National League. Who do you got as Rookie of the Year in the National League?
I got Ronald Acuna, even though he's in the minors right now. I think the ceiling is just so high that even if he misses a month of the season at the beginning of the year, man, it's going to be tough. And Scott Kingery, I like Kingery. We talked about him quite a bit. But Ronald Acuna's skill set is so elite. I have a hard time seeing anybody else winning Rookie of the Year in the National League, even though he's not starting the year with the Major League team.
National League, there's a couple guys to keep an eye on there. Is somebody going to come up and have, an impact like a Bellinger or a Judge? Maybe, perhaps. But I like a pitcher to be the National League Rookie of the Year, and I'm going to go with a guy that's potentially on the best team in the National League. And I'm going to go with Walker Buehler from the Los Angeles Dodgers.
That's another really good, that's good speculation there. And another guy who's starting the year in the minors, but it's not going to be long before he comes up to the Major League team. The only issue I see there, and of course injuries always change the plan, is the Dodgers they're like 6 deep at starting pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
and they're going to save innings on him. They're not going to, but 150 innings was enough for Fulmer was not that much over 150 innings when he won Rookie of the Year over Gary Sanchez when he won Rookie of the Year with Detroit. Michael Fulmer was not over that much, 150 maybe innings. So 150 innings for Walker Buehler could be enough to shore up that National League Rookie of the Year. Jack Flaherty, Lewis Brinson, another guy to keep an eye out for. But I like Acuna and Walker Buehler there. So good picks. National League Cy Young.
National League Cy Young. This is going to be kind of a boring pick, as is my American League Cy Young, but I'm going to go with Clayton Kershaw.
Okay.
I just couldn't find myself to pick anybody except for Clayton Kershaw.
So I shouldn't pick Clayton Kershaw. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think it's a boring pick just because
it's a boring pick. You're right, but it's pretty much the consensus on this
Right.
panel right here. Is I'm not going to pick against Clayton Kershaw, but obviously guys to keep out a watch for. Include Max Scherzer.
Sure. Yep.
For sure in there. Maybe if we're going to talk about a dark horse in the National League, outside of Scherzer and Kershaw, maybe like a Strasburg or Syndergaard, DeGrom,
even, yeah.
So guys to keep an eye out there for NL Cy Young.
And dark horse again. I don't think he's going to be really at the top level of the conversation, but who knows what Yu Darvish can do in Chicago too.
He's going to strike out 200 guys. That's a given. You got to be a little more sparkling than that to be considered for Cy Young, especially with the guys he's up against there. Dark horses maybe include guys like Robbie Ray, guys that we've already mentioned on the show that are maybe in the next 2 or 3 tiers down, but could get hot and win a bunch of games for a contending team and be considered for the NL Cy Young. NL MVP.
Got a guy that I just mentioned that Z took at 7th overall in our fantasy league this year, Nolan Arenado. The numbers this guy has put up the last several years he could have won MVP any of those years. And playing in Coors Field certainly helps your stats. So I'm going to go with Arenado.
I'm going to go with
for Colorado.
Another guy that fits into a similar mold as Arenado in terms of stats from the last 4 years, 5 years. Could have easily won the MVP most of those years. And I'm going to go with Paul Goldschmidt out there in Arizona as cracking through and winning the NL MVP. Another guy to obviously keep an eye on. How could you not keep an eye on Bryce Harper? Contract year. So, typically in a contract year, you see guys go just absolutely nuts. If he stays healthy with the amount of insane amount of talent that's sitting around Bryce Harper, it's tough to even count him out of NL MVP, but I'm going to go with Paul Goldschmidt as you're going with Nolan Arenado. Manager of the Year in the National League.
I've talked a lot about how much I like the Cleveland Indians this year, and I'm going to go with Tito Francona for Manager of the Year.
National League.
Oh, National League. Well, we'll skip ahead to my American League pick. National League, I have this is a little bit of a sleeper or dark horse, I guess. Not necessarily the team because they're expected to be good, but I'm going to go with Dave Martinez.
Very good pick.
As my National League Manager of the Year, rookie manager. He was Joe Madden's right-hand man in Tampa and in Chicago. So he's been around a winning culture. He knows, what it's like to be around a winning team and has witnessed a top-notch manager get his team to the World Series title. In Washington, the talent is there to be a World Series contender. So the table is really set for them to have a successful year. And if Dave Martinez has a solid team managing that year, and again, it always comes down to injuries with, Strasburg and Harper and those guys. If those guys can stay healthy, I think Dave Martinez could surprise people and be Manager of the Year. And even if they don't stay healthy, that's when a manager's skills really can shine. If they do have some roadblocks and have some unexpected injuries, and they still are at the top of that division and a playoff level team, then that's where you look at a manager. It's something Joe Girardi had done in the past and some other guys. You beat injuries, you get around injuries, and you are still a winning team. That says a lot about the guy that's leading your team. So I'll go with Dave Martinez.
I am going to go with a guy Trendy pick in the Central this year to be in contention. Added a lot of pieces this offseason around him. Got a good core of young talent like the Domingo Santanas and Corey Kniebels. I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Brewers, Craig Counsell, National League Manager of the Year.
I like it. He was one of the guys I was considering too for my pick, and he's done a good job with that team. Last year they were, a borderline playoff team, and they've made some additions this year that can really put them over that hump to make
We've
the playoffs.
talked about how much we like that outfield in Milwaukee as being one of the best in the game. So certainly Counsell has some tools out there to work with. It's all up to his managerial style, how well he does out there. But I like Craig Counsell. So let's move on to your National League World
who do
Series.
you have for American League Manager of the Year? I threw out my Francona pick.
Do you really want to know? You want to know?
Aaron Boone?
Every part of me wants to say Aaron Boone, and that I want Aaron Boone to have a Manager of the Year type year.
Aaron Bleepin' Boone.
But if Aaron Boone wins Manager of the Year, that's, you're looking at the Yankees as like a 110 win team for him to because the expectation is there that the Yankees are going to win. So I want to so badly say Aaron Boone as American League Manager of the Year, but I'm going to go with a bit of, I had him in our last episode when we talked about the 7 best managers. I had Mike Scioscia as one of my 7 best managers. They're picked to finish worlds behind the Houston Astros, and I think that they're going to cling around for a little while longer than maybe they should. Maybe potentially sneak into that second wild card position that I currently have Seattle slotted for, but, you could flip-flop those two at any given time during the season. So I'm going to go with Mike Scioscia as my Manager of the Year because, I'm reserving rights on the Angels, too, in that division and perhaps winning some games out there. Last year, Paul Molitor, you see him do it with the Minnesota Twins. A team that maybe wasn't expected to compete. So maybe you see the Angels hang around and you see Mike Scioscia win Manager of the Year. Mike Scioscia.
All right, where are we at?
National League representation in the World Series.
The Washington Nationals.
Way to go out on a limb, my friend. Okay, so we'll get back to that one in a minute.
Which it kind of is out on a limb because when you consider that the Dodgers and the Cubs are in the mix there's not too many people picking Washington. But, yeah, there's certainly not a surprise team.
It's not. You didn't say the San Diego Padres.
Sure,
so.
Yeah, or the Cincinnati Reds.
Listen. The Reds are better than everybody gives them credit for. Mark my words. The Reds are a 500 team this year. Mark my words. 73.5 wins. Vegas Insider, you can kiss my behind on the Cincinnati Reds. They're a better team than that. National League representation in the World Series for me, as much as I hate to say it, I got the Dodgers. And I hate the Dodgers. Let's just, we'll air it out there. That I hate the Dodgers, almost as much as I hate the Red Sox, but I have no problem giving props where props are due, and they're certainly due out there in Los Angeles with the squad that they're bringing in out of spring training right now. So I'm going to go with my National League representation as the Dodgers, repeating as the National League pennant winners and getting to the World Series again. Okay, so we've already gone over AL Manager of the Year. How about AL Rookie of the Year?
AL Rookie of the Year is another kid that is going to be starting the year in the minor leagues. A guy that the Texas Rangers acquired from the Dodgers in the Yu Darvish trade, Willie Calhoun.
Willie Calhoun.
He's a guy that's built like a bowling ball. He's like 5'8", and he's pretty built up guy. Almost like kind of how you saw Kirby Puckett was built back in the day. Willie
like
Calhoun kind of has that look to him. I think before long, and it's probably going to end up being one of those service time things where he'll be down in the minors for a few weeks, maybe a month, and they'll call him up to be their starting left fielder. A guy that has 25 to 30 home run pop, good average, doesn't strike out much. He's going to be a good, solid player, and it's just going to be a matter of time if they call him up in time to get enough body of work this season to be Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. So Willie Calhoun, Texas Rangers.
Willie Calhoun. We got Eric Leo checking in saying that Yu Darvish is a great pick there. We got Dave checking in, our resident Cleveland Indians fan checking in and calling me a homer. I try to maintain some objectivity here, my friend. I'm going to talk about the Yankees because I do like them, but I don't think I'm much of a homer on air. Maybe at the bar, I'm a little bit of a homer because I do love my Yanks, but thanks for calling me a homer out there, my man. And if you were on, you'd be a homer too because you would talk nothing about any other team but the Tribe. I know this, you know this, so thanks for listening, Dave. And we got Genesee Joe Trisolino out there saying that we're sounding good. Coming from you, Joe, that's a great compliment. I appreciate you watching, and we both look forward to getting into the season and getting some more shows under our belt. But coming from Genesee Joe, longtime radio celebrity in this area, that's a great compliment, Genesee Joe. Thank you very much for that.
What's up, Joe? And thank you for the compliment, and thanks for tuning in, buddy.
A homer. He called me a homer. Moving on, we're in the American League. We've gone over Manager of the Year and Rookie of the Year. Who do you got for your American League MVP? And I'm going to tell you right now, I had somebody picked for my American League MVP, but I'm not doing it anymore because it was a Cleveland Indian. So I'm going to come up with a new one while you tell me.
I have a Cleveland Indian as my AL MVP. Dave, I am not a homer. I'm picking a Cleveland Indian here. I could have easily went Giancarlo Stanton, which he's going to be right up there if he can stay in the lineup without missing any time. But I have a Cleveland Indian, Francisco Lindor.
Wow.
I think.
Not the Cleveland Indian that I was going to pick.
And that's why I picked him is because he might not be an obvious MVP candidate, but the things that kid brings to that lineup, power, average, stolen bases, defense. You saw Altuve win the MVP last year, so you see middle infielders winning MVP awards now, which is something you didn't really see too often back in the day. But I think Lindor is going to have an MVP type season, and with the type of season I'm expecting from the Cleveland Indians, I'm going to put him as my MVP of the AL.
I like that. So, I won't be a homer. The Yankees have 2 potential MVP candidates there. Maybe 3 if you count Gary Sanchez, because we've seen Gary Sanchez go off on absolute tears. But I won't even harp on any of them. I will say that, my original pick, and I'll go with it, even though it's an Indian, and I'm a little sour on the Indians now because my boy called me a homer, but I'm going to go with Jose Ramirez. That's a guy that checks every single box on one of the best lineups in the game. He seems to be involved in everything. He gets on base, he scores runs, he disrupts on the bases. He had a very awesome stretch last year where he was definitely an MVP candidate, and I'm going to go with Jose Ramirez, my AL MVP.
And you can say, pretty much everything I said about Lindor and you said about Ramirez can be said for the other player. I mean, that description fits both of them. And yeah, I think Ramirez is, a good sleeper pick for MVP. Another guy that has elite plate discipline, rarely strikes out. He's a really tough guy to strike out.
And now I've been redeemed, according to Dave. I'm redeemed.
Made up for it,
that's
huh?
good. Just when I thought you couldn't get any dumber, you go and do something like this. Totally redeem yourself. Thanks, Dave.
Redemption.
I appreciate, our longtime listener, Dave out there watching and commenting on this. Means a lot, buddy. Thanks for letting me redeem myself for now. And, now that we're past MVP, we're going to get into Cy Young. No Corey Kluber between the two of us, I don't think, right? Am I reading you right?
I like Corey Kluber. He is the reigning Cy Young winner.
He is the reigning Cy Young. Does he repeat?
I don't think he repeats, and I really like Corey Kluber. Another boring pick, though. I'm going to go with Chris Sale.
It's a pretty boring pick, but it was my pick as well.
And just like, with Kershaw, he was a guy that I just could not – I looked at Kluber and I looked at some of these other arms in the American League, Severino being one of them, and I just couldn't help myself but to keep coming back to Chris Sale is the favorite for the Cy Young in the AL, and Chris Sale's my pick.
Deservedly so. He is the favorite. And I'm going to go with Chris Sale, too, as much as it pains me to do, as a Yankees fan, to pick a Red Sox. But listen, he's the best guy in the American League. Not saying that Corey Kluber or Luis Severino doesn't run on the next tier, but Sale right now is the guy. So I don't disagree with you. As a matter of fact, I completely agree with you. And I'll go Chris Sale, too. So now's the time that we get into being homers, if we want to be. We're going to go with AL representation in the World Series. Who you got coming out of the junior circuit in the Fall Classic, my man?
Dave's really going to like me tonight, and I'm not going to have any accusations of being a homer. Dave, you owe me a beer next time I see you for these awesome Cleveland Indians picks, by the way. I got Cleveland in the World Series. The Cleveland Indians winning the AL pennant for the second time in 3 years.
If we had sound clips right now, we would cue Bob Uecker in Major League. The Indians win the pennant. The Indians win the pennant. Oh, my God. The Indians win the pennant. It's a tough pick to disagree with, but I'm gonna be a complete and total homer right now, and I think the Yankees get over the hump this year that they almost got over last year, and I think that they land themselves in the World Series. And totally not being a homer, if you go look on paper and you look at that bullpen, which wins in October, period. You've seen that be the trend since the early 90s, where the back end of that bullpen is really what carries you through September and October, and there is not a better bullpen assembled in Major League Baseball. I think Houston and Cleveland and New York and Boston are the four classes of that, and I think you got the other 11 teams in that league really playing for one spot.
Yeah, they're all fighting for one spot.
So all of these teams are going to make it. And again, alluding back to what we talked about before, I got Seattle as the other wild card winner, but potentially like an Angels team.
Minnesota, the Angels, they're in the mix.
Could Toronto hang on long enough and not sell off their pieces?
The Chicago White Sox surprise people with their young arms and maybe get
They're going to surprise Vegas for sure, because Vegas has them as 68.5 wins. But
Texas Rangers.
I'm gonna be a homer here, and I got the Dodgers playing the Yankees in the World Series, something that I was hoping I got to see last year. But the Dodgers and the Yankees winning the World Series, I can't say that I don't have the Yankees winning it all. So I got the Yankees winning it all. Stick that in your homer pipe and smoke it, my man.
My pick for World Series champion is once again the Cleveland Indians.
Wow!
I think this is the year, and we have seen so many of these, for lack of a better term, curses end over the last.
It's time that the Indians curse ends.
The last 15 years or so.
What is it, 1954, right?
I believe so. Dave, you can correct us if we're wrong, but it's right around there. And, you saw in the mid-2000s, you saw the Chicago White Sox win one. They had been, the better part of a century before, since the last time they'd won one. Obviously, the Red Sox,
Yeah, let's not talk about that. We can skip over that one. Chicago Cubs. Yep.
And the Indians, they've been right there these last couple of years. I mean,
and a couple of years previous to that too.
World
1997,
Series,
they
lost
lose.
The Cubs. It does not get any closer.
No.
To a World Series title.
Best World Series I've watched maybe in my lifetime.
I think so. You might be able to make some arguments for some other ones.
1948. Dave checking in. 1948.
It's the best World Series I remember seeing a couple of years ago. That Cubs and Indians just slugfest. What a great World Series.
So the Indians and the Nationals and the Yankees and the Dodgers. We didn't go out on too much of a limb really for our picks. I don't know. I think we got pretty good picks.
So who you got winning it all? Dodgers or Yankees?
I got the Yankees winning. Yeah. I can't say that I have the Dodgers beating the Yankees. That's an impossibility. In my mind anyway, unless they call back guys like Mickey Owen and Jackie Robinson, and we're not going to see no Dodgers beating the Yankees. But I got the Dodgers and the Yankees. I got the Yankees winning it all. And I'm a homer, and I don't care.
Yeah, you're calling it like you see it, man. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, it's not. It's if the Yankees were coming into this year with Claudel Washington and Mike Palirullo, I might not be harping on it, but it's Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez and Severino in that bullpen. So I'm all in on the Yanks, even though I'm a Yankee fan. I'm all in. But Dave's saying perfect for a nice 70th anniversary to break the curse. I agree with you, Dave. So don't let any of the last 10 minutes let anybody think that I'm really sour on the Indians. I kind of follow the Indians throughout the year, and it's an intriguing story. So I'd be rooting for them to end their curse, certainly. But right now, I'm all in on the Yanks. So that's it. There's our predictions. We'll write them down in the annals of history and see how they fare in September, October time. We'll revisit them. And now we are going to get to near the end of the game here in our seventh inning stretch. We're going to discuss what we think are our top 7 stadiums in Major League Baseball.
We'll run through these before we get out of here real quick and give you our list of our 7 top stadiums in ballparks in Major League Baseball. And
Stop the presses, though. I have an important message from Riley.
I saw that.
I miss you, Dada.
Riley, I love you too, sweetie. Thanks for watching. I'll be home soon.
So 7 best stadiums in Major League Baseball out of 30, and that's tough to do. Mine are not necessarily places that I visited, but a few of them are someplace that I've been to. So looking forward to this one. Why don't you start it off?
I'll start with my my 7th, and it's Petco Park in San Diego. And one of the really cool features about that stadium is the Western Metal Supply Company building that they incorporated into the stadium in left field, and it actually serves as the left field foul pole, one of the corners of the building. Just a really cool looking building there that they decided not to tear down to build that park and made it a feature in the ballpark. And I thought that was really unique and really cool. So Petco Park in San Diego is my number 7.
All right. Gorgeous new stadium. So I don't disagree with you. With my number 7, it's a stadium that more or less should be higher on my list, but I'm not going to pay it that much respect. But it is on my list nonetheless, then I'm going to go with Fenway Park. Just the history involved in a stadium that's been open so long, and seen its share, even though it went for, it's seen its share of heartbreak for so long. It has seen its fair share of World Series titles there. And certainly a roster of Hall of Famers have come through there and called Fenway home. The pesky pole and the green monster and the Sitco sign and Yawkey Way, all things that you tie into the ambiance of Fenway Park. So I'm going to go, my last one on my list, I'll go with Fenway Park. Number 6.
For my number 6 stadium, I have the home of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Busch Stadium.
New Busch Stadium. Really nice ballpark. It's got views of the St. Louis Arch in the background. Very cool. I've never been there personally, but from what I've seen and from what I've read, they've got a really cool setup outside the park. It's like its own little town of little shops and restaurants and everything. And the fans there are great too in St. Louis, and there's a lot of history, baseball history in that town. So I think they did a really nice job getting away from that, that 1970s cookie cutter style of the last Busch Stadium and making a really nice retro park, which is a fitting home for a team with one of the most storied histories in baseball. So I've got Busch Stadium in St. Louis as number 6.
All right, number 6, I have, the stadium that really started this new trend of the ballparks being cathedrals again. And it incorporated the wrought iron and the brick and the warehouse in right field, famously hit by Ken Griffey Jr. in the home run derby. I'm going to go with Orioles Park at Camden Yards, my number 6.
That's my number 5, Orioles Park at
Perfect.
Camden Yards. And that's somewhere I hope to visit someday. I haven't been there. You mentioned Ken Griffey Jr., and that's one of the first things I think about it. It's funny, before I even think of any Orioles players, when I think of Camden Yards, Oriole Park at Camden Yards, I think of Ken Griffey Jr. with the backwards hat, just crushing baseballs in the home run derby off the warehouse. And
Agreed.
I remember
Agreed.
being in my backyard as a kid with my brother, just throwing each other tennis balls and crushing them off the neighbor's
warehouse,
house.
and calling it the
we
warehouse,
called
right?
the neighbor's house the warehouse.
Absolutely.
And we'd hit, we'd do a little batting practice, home run derby. And like you mentioned, too, that was the first of the retro stadium builds back in, I want to say, like
1994, 93,
yeah,
somewhere around there. Yep.
And that started a trend of a lot of gorgeous ballparks being built. So that was really a key model of the way how stadiums were going to be going forward, getting rid of that just circle concrete donut with a ball field and football field in the middle of it, and building a stadium that is meant to be a baseball ballpark.
Oh, you mean Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati?
Riverfront Stadium,
is
Three Rivers Stadium.
Three Rivers Stadium, another one, just
Atlanta
a ring
Fulton
with
County Stadium,
the
Atlanta.
launching pad.
Yep.
So I'm going to try to redeem myself again, maybe. And I'm going to go with my number 5 pick is the Jake by the Lake, formerly known as Jacobs Field, but now known as Progressive Field in Cleveland. Have never been there. Want to check it off my bucket list. But every single time that the Yankees play there, and that's really the only time I get to watch games there, every single time that the Yankees play there, it's packed to the gills. There's always smoke in the outfield from the barbecue that they're cooking out there. I like how left field is elevated, and it's a lot of standing room type stuff. Really a fan of that style ballpark where it's more of an attraction than you got to sit glued in your seat and watch. It looks like there's all sorts of places to watch at Progressive Field. So I'm going to go with my number 5 pick, the Jake by the Lake, Progressive Field.
All right, let's see. My number 4 stadium is Fenway Park, which we already covered, and it's a place I've been a number of times. It's been a long time since I have been there, but I went there. My parents brought me there as a kid to watch some Yankees Red Sox games, which was quite the eye-opening experience, as a kid. And the feel of going to that ballpark, you just feel like nostalgia, old baseball. And to me, that's really cool. And yeah, there are some downsides to the park. It's, being an old stadium like that has, it's got its faults. There's some obstructed views. The seats are kind of close together, at least when I was there, where you're kind of crammed in there. You don't have the modern amenities of new big style seating that you see in some of these newer parks. But Fenway Park, I think, absolutely deserves a spot on any list of the top ballparks in baseball.
Agreed. I can't argue with any of the stuff, lacking the amenities. The bathrooms are kind of suspect, and but just the ambiance at that field is worth going to check out. My next park is one that I definitely have very high on my ballpark bucket list, and that's AT&T Park in San Francisco. The one thing that probably everybody thinks of when they think of that is San Francisco Bay, being out there in right field and attainable for the hitters to get to, left-handed bombs, splash hits they call them. You can take a boat to the game, and you can dock your boat and walk up. Also very interesting in San Francisco, they do have a knot hole. The old knot hole game thing. They got a knot hole section where you can pay, I think it's like $5, and you can go watch 3 innings, standing room in the outfield.
Oh, I did not know that. That's very cool.
So it's just a really cool park. Another one in a long line of sellouts. They tend to not have many open seats in Frisco. They love their baseball. So AT&T Park on my bucket list to go see, and I got that at number 4.
AT&T Park is my number 3. And for all the reasons you mentioned, what a cool stadium design there, being able to hit. And you saw it with Barry Bonds and a number of these left-handed hitting power guys, just splash hits, dunking them out into the bay, and seeing all these guys in kayaks
going after the balls,
boats just swimming around, jumping into the water when they have to, especially back in the day when Bonds, for better or for worse, was chasing records. But yeah, I think that is such a cool design for a stadium, and that is my number 3. ballpark.
Number 3, I have, potentially my favorite looking stadium. Another one that I've yet to go to, but landed on my list just because it is the coolest backdrop in Major League Baseball, in my opinion. And that's PNC Park in Pittsburgh, with the Roberto Clemente Bridge in the background. Just an epically cool looking stadium. Obviously, all of the amenities of a new modern stadium would be really attractive to go. I'm sure they got Permane Brothers somewhere in concession land there where you could go get the French fries and the sandwich. But just how cool is that outfield to look at? You get to walk across the Clemente Bridge to get to the stadium. That ranks probably tip top of the stadiums I haven't been to. That's probably right at the top of the list, along with my number 2 stadium, another place that I really want to go. But PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we are on the same page here because my number 2 ballpark is PNC Park, and I have been lucky enough to see a ball game there. I saw the Pittsburgh Pirates and Cincinnati Reds play a game there about 5 years ago or so, and man, everything you do see on TV and all the pictures you see, that's all legit. It is everything that it seems to be when you go to PNC Park. I sat on the third base side, which that gives you a more direct view of the Roberto Clemente pedestrian bridge and the Allegheny River. And it was just such a cool place to see a game. And I do want to make it back there someday. That's my number 2 ballpark, and if you can go see a game in Pittsburgh at PNC Park and you are a baseball fan, you will not be disappointed.
All right. So my number 2 pick is another place that's on my bucket list, and it's probably on 99% of baseball fans' bucket list to go see a game at Wrigley Field. The Ivy. The house is in the background. The building's in the background now part of the stadium technically. They've been purchased by the Chicago Cubs. For the longest time, there was the fans that tried to skirt the rules and go sit up on the roofs there. But now those houses are all corporately owned or owned by the Chicago Cubs. But you talk about history and ambiance and nostalgia and probably every other superlative that you could assign to a baseball stadium, and that all applies to Wrigley Field in Chicago. So Wrigley, you are on my bucket list for sure, and I can't wait to come and see you, but you are ranking number 2 on my best ballparks in the major leagues. Now, that's a ballpark that for the longest time didn't have night games, and now they have night games, and for the longest time didn't have an electronic scoreboard, and now they have an electronic scoreboard, but they've managed to add seating, but they do it in such a way that you can't tell that it's even happened. Similar to what they did in Fenway, where they added a whole bunch of extra seats, but you can't really tell. They didn't veer into the modern and try to splash the ultra modern all over the nostalgia. Doing a really good job out there in Chicago with it, and I can't wait to see it. So Wrigley Field, my number 2.
Wrigley Field is my number 1.
Wow.
Ballpark.
So we've been climbing the ladder straight up.
We're one off on a lot of these.
Have you been to Wrigley?
I have not, and you hit the nail on the head. That's I think every baseball fan's bucket list has Wrigley Field on
It's
it.
got.
I would love to go there, see a game someday.
And I would be decked out in head to toe Cubs gear, head to toe. If I ever go to Wrigley Field, I will be wearing a Cubs hat, a Cubs jersey. I will be singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," root, root, root for the Yanks and the Cubbies. But I would definitely get all in on the Cubs atmosphere if I go to Wrigley.
It just seems like the type of place where it's just a true baseball experience.
It has to be. You know why?
And you know what? It has nothing to do with the game that's going on the field. Like, I mean, the game could be a 20-0 blowout, and I would be just overjoyed to be able to go check out Wrigley Field for the experience of being at the ballpark.
You know why it's sold out all the time and it makes it just so great is that these guys lost for 100 straight years. 100 years of, better luck next year, Cubs. And it was still packed that whole time. So you're around baseball fans. Those are guys that love their team, win, lose, or draw. They love the Cubbies, and they wear it on their sleeves there at Wrigley. So to be surrounded by that, and similarly, how you got to feel if you go to a game at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, because that's
absolutely, yeah.
the best baseball.
Yep.
That's what they say is St. Louis is the best baseball town in America. So it's got to be very similar, and no question that those guys are bitter rivals too. So interesting. Maybe we can grab a Missouri and Chicago trip in one kind of foul swoop, and we can go see both these stadiums. But Wrigley Field, you're number one. I'm going to go with another homer pick for my number one, and it's not user friendly. The beers are $20. The bathroom lines are long. The crime rate around the stadium is probably pretty high. The last Metro North runs at midnight, whether they're in, or 11 o'clock, whether they're in extra innings or they're not. And you got to make a decision. Are you going to get a ride with the train back to Beacon, or are you going to hang out and find a hotel in the Bronx or in Manhattan and stay for the night? But Yankee Stadium. And here's my reason that Yankee Stadium is number one. It's the first place that I ever remember walking into and getting the chills and almost being moved to tears the first time that I ever walked in. I've never seen a green or green. I've never seen a blue or blue. I've never felt such excitement and anxiety at the same exact time about a place. Yankee Stadium in the playoffs, I was fortunate enough to go to the ALCS a few times, and Yankee Stadium in the playoffs, it's indescribable. Monument Park, granted it's not the same place that, it's across the street from the old stadium, but Monument Park, where yes, Dave, seriously, I picked Yankee Stadium. And I'm talking about how it's not the original right now, sir. So Yankee Stadium for me, just because of the memories for me, and the sheer number of times that I've been there, even to the new one, opened in 2009, and they christened it with their last World Series title. And it has nothing to do with the $20 beers and nothing to do with the overpriced food, or the travel costs or the ticket costs or the fact that you can't get close during BP. All that stuff is a wash when I walk in and I see the greenest green and I see the bluest blue, and I'm home. I feel home when I see Yankee Stadium, and we come off the subway. I feel home. I feel home at Stan's, and I feel home at the Dominican bar that's 3 blocks up from the parking garage, and we park in the parking garage 2 or 3 hours before the game, and we walk up to this Dominican bar, and they got $12 buckets of 5 of Presidentes. It's all about being in the Bronx. It's about seeing the pinstripes up close. So Yankee Stadium is my number one, and I have no qualms about being a homer.
I won't argue with that, because I do completely understand the feeling of walking into that stadium. As Dave mentioned, if it were the original, he'd give it some credence, and if it was still, which still even wasn't the original, the last iteration of Yankee Stadium, that would have been number one on my list.
Agreed.
Everything you said, I still completely agree with, but man, that old stadium, I remember just walking out of the concourse tunnel. Because now the concourses are gorgeous.
It goes right around the whole stadium.
They're
now.
Gorgeous. You can see everything from the concourse.
So that exact moment that you're about to describe is the exact moment that I'm thinking of in my head. And I'm not necessarily, I guess, talking about the new Yankee Stadium in terms of just Yankee Stadium, right? And, that exact moment, walking up that tunnel, walking up to the peak of that concourse where you get there and you peek over and the sun starts shining in that green grass and that blue sky. So continue. I don't mean to cut you off.
There is nothing like the feeling that I remember getting in the old stadium.
Bob Shepard over the PA.
Walking through those tunnels and coming out to that field and just knowing the history that actually happened on that field. So that in the new stadium, you lose a lot of that. Not that it's not a gorgeous ballpark, and not that it still doesn't have a lot of that history, being right next door to where Yankee Stadium was prior. But those memories I have as a kid of going to that stadium, absolutely, that would be my number one pick. I remember going to a game in the last season of Old Yankee Stadium and knowing that it was going to be my final time at that stadium, and walking down to the second deck there, the loge that overlooks the field, and just standing there and looking at that field and just not wanting to leave. I just wanted to stand there and look at it and reminisce about being a kid and going to games there, and just it's a lot to do with why I became a Yankees fan and baseball fan in general, is just that memory and experience of being a kid and just going to that place for the first time. And I was fortunate enough that my parents took me to many games when I was young and introduced me to that early enough where I learned to appreciate it and love it when I was a kid. And yeah, baseball, I think that's kind of what it all comes down to, is thinking about like the Sandlot and just being a kid and just playing ball and just the purity and just the the nuances of baseball is something that no other game can claim. And these ballparks are a huge part of it, and it's really cool to even just be watching on TV and just seeing these little kids in the stands and stuff, and just thinking like, man, these kids are going to be talking about that day, especially if they have some interaction with a player or something. They're going to be talking about that day for the rest of their life potentially. And I remember going to the old Yankee Stadium when I was a kid and standing outside waiting for players to come out, and I remember being there with my parents and my brother and sister and wanting to see Mike Pagliarulo come out. I wanted an autograph from Pags. and here comes this guy that I'd never heard of from the Seattle Mariners at the time that saw a little kid there with a baseball that signed it, Edgar Martinez. And, man, that memory sticks with me forever. And that's, kind of what got me into the game of baseball, is little experiences like that, going to Yankee Stadium, going to Blue Sox games. There's nothing like it, man. And I'm excited for this season. And, I still feel like a little kid again every opening day.
Every single bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs, down by 1 run, grand slam that I ever hit in my brain in wiffle ball and in the Sandlot. It was all done at Yankee Stadium. All of it. Every single one.
Under
the
the
bright
most
lights
part,
in
me
the
too,
Bronx,
except for
right?
the Ken Griffey Jr. bombs off the warehouse.
Absolutely. But, that's our 7th inning stretch right there. Top 7 Major League Baseball stadiums, obviously up for debate, but the 30 Major League Baseball stadiums that are out there are the cathedrals, the churches of baseball, and we're fortunate enough to not have the Synergy Fields or Riverfront stadiums and 3 River stadiums. We got one, actually 2, if you count Oakland as one. That's the Oakland Coliseum probably needs to go out of the game, the dual football stadium type thing. And Tropicana Field is pretty awful. But other than that, there's a slew of many good stadiums out there to go experience, and I'm hoping to check some of them off of my list coming up here really soon. But 7th inning stretch, there it is. We are going to get to the close of our show where we go out of the baseline, and out of our baseline this week is who?
Jorge Polanco, and you are out of the baseline.
And what did Mr. Polanco manage to get himself into?
We got another player, second show in a row that we've done, that has been suspended for 80 games for performance-enhancing drugs. He was expected to be the starting shortstop for the Minnesota Twins, a playoff team, a good team, and in a lineup that was good and on a team that is predicted to be successful this year. But he's going to be missing half of that due to performance-enhancing drug suspension. So that's disappointing. Jorge Polanco, you are out of the baseline. So we're going to wrap it up here. Before we do get going, give a shout-out again to our sponsors, Coldwell Banker Faith Properties, Priceless Inspections, attorney Nick Pasalacqua and Associates, Steep Ponte Volkswagen. I want to give a quick plug for an event that the D has going on Friday, March 30th, this coming Friday, at Mohawk Valley Winery down on Varick Street. There's a fundraiser for the documentary film Search for the Soul, which is very interesting stuff. If you have not researched this, it's going to be documented. Our buddy and partner here at Disruption Network, Todd Williams, is going to Africa to document the effects and healing powers of the iboga plant and ibogaine. Very powerful stuff, and there's a benefit for that on this coming Friday, March 30th. Search for the Soul. There's an event on the Disruption Network Facebook page. Please go check that out. Give them some support. This is going to be a very, very cool project, and I'm looking forward to following along on Todd and the crew's journey, and it's a very worthwhile cause. So check that out. Friday, March 30th, Mohawk Valley Winery. I think that's it. Go check out disruptionnetwork.net, all the content there and all these awesome other shows on this
check
network.
out our sister shows out there. We got Ease, Beats, and Bizz. Home
D-Line.
Free with Adeline Van Dyke, Back Talk with Tommy Drama. Our sister show, I keep saying sister show, and Chicken doesn't like when I say that, but our football podcast, if you guys are into the football thing, the D-Line, and every single day, every single weekday, you got your host, Anthony Z. Donaldson with EC Radio right here on the D.
And you can find past episodes of our show and all of those other shows that we've mentioned and all sorts of great content on the website, disruptionnetwork.net. So check it out. Enjoy opening day. We only got 4 days left.
4 days.
This Thursday, you're going to be able to watch every single team in action, and we're going to be tuned in and checking it out, and I'm sure we're going to be taking notes and writing down all sorts of cool topics and things that we'll be talking about next time on the Baseline.
Can't wait. And our next Baseline show will be our first regular season show.
That's
so
right.
I
Yep.
cannot wait for it. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into our longest show so far. We're over the 2-hour mark here, but really easy talking baseball with this guy sitting across from me and all the news and notes that we had going on this week. Really looking forward to getting into the teeth of the season. But for right now, you have been on the Baseline. We appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you next time only on the D. Thanks,
We're out.
everybody. We're out.